That meant unlawful prosecution. Persecution, harassment, intimidation, as well as victimization. You explained that due to your stance and your position as a magistrate to work according to the dictates of your conscience, the law and justice, you were actually earmarked by the executive. And you were just about to give us an example of how this came to play. When you had a clash with the military in Farafenni, I believe it was at a military checkpoint. Kindly tell us how that unfolded.
It's okay. Thank you so much. I remember one day, I was in Farafenni. The same Abasanya I spoke about earlier on. His elder brother was my personal friend. He had a mission. He came to Farafenni, but he was exhausted. He was tired. He wanted me to drop him at the Bambatenda terminal. He pleaded with me to give him a lift, just to drop him at the riverside. So I was obliged. We moved. When we reached the army camp, the road was clear. There was no vehicle in the checkpoint. So I drove straight in and I found a military officer standing on the highway. He said, I needed his permission for him to give me signal to enter the checkpoint. He asked me to go back on the rear. I said I wasn't going to do it. He insisted vehemently. He brought down his rifle. I told him, look, this does not scare me. I'm not moving. So we had an altercation, verbal altercation there. But when he realized I wasn't going to move, and after a lot of irresponsible talk, I put on the gear of my vehicle and I left him behind. So I went, I dropped Abba and I came back. But in the ensuing altercation, he asked who I was. I told him I am the traveling magistrate, but I said that's not important here. And he started shouting at the peak of his voice, are you king, are you this, are you that? So like I said, I proceeded to Bambatenda, I dropped a band and I came back.
And at this point, were you also in your official vehicle?
Yes, that was the official vehicle for the magistrate. And I must also say this, all along the South Bank and the North Bank route, everybody identified that vehicle. because it was in service for over a period of 5 years or more.
Mbe wo moto le kono ye mendina do kura moto men nyanta tarlambulu mbe wo le kono adum be nyim fola wo moto ba kankum fulo be karafulo be wo moto lonne ya sute kato yatara moto nyi wuchew menke do ko lantel bulu jay sanji lulo sile.
In fact, when he was misbehaving, one of his colleagues came from the main gate, approached him, tried to whisper to him that you are talking to the magistrate.
Kato birabe o manya siala je akafunyoma kilim fang botana bunda bala anata wala fita diamula ka diamwa e dumala ka fayen ko ka diamu nyimmete nyino magistrate tijang.
But he was just an indisciplined character.
Bari molo meya lonko aketa moleti meya lonko amang horoma soto.
So in the evening, when his commander, the camp commander in Farafenye,
Pitungura aro ala commander memmarta campo la Farafenye je,
who was at the time Yankuba Drame, the current CDS.
Me alonko utumo e ka fayna Yankuba Drame. Bari bitilo wole msojaro lubela nyaton kote CDS, Chief of Defense Staff.
He came to Nawek Farafenye station to meet his cousin brother Omar, who was my friend. I used to stay with Omar in Farafenye.
Anatan Nawek la officer of Farafenye, purukana asanao badin doji je, ika fome Omar, adu Omar, wayatara umunte terletin na katara nyokan wati jama.
Omar is the full broad elder brother of Abba.
Abba, womu Omar koto maleti yelola karola ngamira identa bani mfala.
So I complained to Yakuba how, in fact, this officer misbehaved.
Ituotumolo nga kala miro fo Yankuba nyin sojaro ay manya menke wolunte nte kang siloka.
He was sorry about it. He apologized personally. So we spoke over it, and that was the end.
Ndi amuta aketaye afango ye kuyanye kuoti barbitung ayembolo sai nga kodi amufonga banje farang.
So when I went back to Kombo, I narrated the incident to my dad. He was offended. He said I should write a petition.
Birin seitan ang Kombo ndi amuta mfamaye aketaye kuyanye kuoti akonyanta kalamiro safela lewo kuokama.
Then I wrote a letter, a formal letter of complaint to the commandant of the camp in Farafenye.
Wotumolem ngawasi danin kalamir letoro safe kaki kuntonko mem commandati membe Farafenye campo wotumo.
I copied the Secretary General, copied the Army Commander then Babkar Jata, copied the Master of the High Court.
Nga letoro nying yelemang ngadoki Attorney General ngadoki sojaro la kuntonko ngadoki dinkira luto dal damen yalon ko keta dinkira kum malti letoro nyanta tala damen luto.
Few days later, I was in Mansukonko. The post office messenger came and delivered a letter in my hand.
Til danta obe kola mbe Mansukonko, bari do kula membe post office ka letoro lu pose damin, anata ay letoro natinya ayadum blokono.
This was a reply to my letter that I addressed to the Army Commander in Farafenye. But this time round, it was the Army Commander who was writing to me, Babkar Jata, with a very rude and sulky letter. I'm sorry to say. Very rude and sulky letter.
Bitung ni letero le kata jabiroti ntenga letero men safenu sojar nyaton ko e Farafenye. Bari nak men na tante jabi wala sojarul bela nyaton ko te utumo e kafa e Babkar Jata. Bara la letero kata letter ti men ya lonko kuma furim balu men ya lonko horomanta ya kumolu ayol le safe wol letero to.
Indicating in the said letter that they've not been able to control me, but this time around they'll get me.
And that foko itelumante malankuno bari nyin silo ibe bulo la lankanne.
Okay, when I received the letter, I read it 3 times.
Bringa letero nyin soto nga karansi nya saba.
I was so annoyed about it.
Akoyen kamfa bake.
Then I received a call
Ituotumo fananata kumandiro soto
on the land phone.
Telefono ti meya lonkolem office kono telefono ti land phone.
Mr. Touray, before we go to the call, from the contents of the letter and how you felt about it, did you feel threatened in any way?
No, I was not threatened. As a matter of fact, I was willing to engage Babkar.
But was it a threat?
It was a threat, but I was willing to engage him. I wanted to send him a stinker.
Ate kuma kamalu menu safia munta silandir kumollem. Bari wo mante silandia mambo noto nda fa lafta jabila num fa nganyon kuma kon kolengulu kiyaye.
So I then received a call
Otumo monata nkumandi
Again, another big coincidence. It was his assistant who was Sheriff Samsudin Sarr.
Yo, andung anatake kuti menketa bengoti. Andu tatake ate nolang koleti, ikafome numo Sheriff Samsudin Sarr.
Sheriff Samsudin had been trying to reach me on the phone for over a week.
Sheriff Samsudin ba kata kanum pur kante soto telefono to, men tatan fa siata lokumuti.
On a private matter.
E kula karola me yalonko omu karala koleti.
I've never met him in life.
So
he would call all the stations where I used to travel because we sit in Manskonko, Farafenye, Kerawan, and SEO. And then when I come down to the combos, so he would keep calling all around various stations where I work and my home address in Serekunda.
I commandiro kedinkira jamale to montela ko do ko Benjamin nkata male kata kito lo kedulalto mansa konko farafenye kerewan ndaka kito kedamenu beto ayulu be kumandi kata hanfo na suo fongo kono ala commandiro tata baro nyonya nding aman soton no fowulum.
So when I received this call, he introduced himself, we greeted, and then we spoke about the issue he wanted to discuss with me.
So bring ala kumandiro soto nganyo konto nganyo hadamaya hanfo ngambandi bitu tumole na takacha te bande kumandi kan komena bitu ngawobe kacha utumole.
Then I said to him, but look, I said, I just received a letter from your army headquarters, and it's your commander, Babkar Jata, who's writing to me. The letter is rude and sulky.
Utumole nata fai bringa diamo banka bari nga letero le soto mbulu jande membota alla sojaru goya kuntonko ya. Bari letero nyin kuma furing kuma hormantam balle be kal letero nyin kono.
I said to him, I didn't write to Babkar, I only copied him.
Nka nte mam Babkar fango safe. Ntenga men safe nga ki meye nga ayele male drom pour ka ki ate fana ye pra fanansi bo akalama.
And he said, oh, is it you? I said, yes. Oh, you are the magistrate who was the subject of that letter? I said, yes. He said, please, I beg you for God's sake, don't reply to that letter.
Akonye yo muna mitelo magistrate o tinkai ha. Akonye bitu letter o amunta ya ulitele kamankai ha. Akonye ngedani alaye kana o letter o jabi.
He then quickly added, he said, I beg you, do it for my own sake, not for your own sake anymore. Please don't write reply to that letter.
Aseta kotaka akonye mbedani la alaye. Akentela ko kama kanete fangla ko jube bari ntela ko jube kana o letter o jabi.
He said there is a big conspiracy behind that letter. If you would reply to that letter, you may even lose your very life.
Akonye jamfa jaubale be sitiring wo letter o la ko kama. Adunia jabi ya ko tentendi asekeno if sibono ini o fangoto.
Said this matter was discussed in State House.
And orders
have been given by the president.
Said when
Babakar came from State House, he called my assistant, that was the third in command, Mr. Baji. I cannot remember his first name now, but it's Mr. Baji. He said Babakar called my assistant, who was third in command in the army.
State House. Babukar mo kumandi me yalon sojaro la nyaton kaya silo. Wole mo sabanja utime mo sojaro lube kunton koti kadu ni botate Babukariya atelo mo foloti fulanja mo Mr. Sarleti sabanja go Mr. Bajilo mo ta kanyina to tolale andum Mr. Jata yo fon kumandile kadiamwae.
So when Babukar was talking to Baji in his office, he said, you know, in the army headquarters, if you know the building, he said the upstairs apartment, it doesn't have a ceiling. So when you are talking in one office, and you are in another office, you can hear directly all what is being said.
Ako Babukar bedia mukawo Mr. Baji yetumomeng niye sojar korda nyin Kenya lonje silinte bunyina ni bedia mukang office do kono membe siring office do kono wokela kumakang lubemo ile wole asabu Babukar bedia mukang nyin ala assistant yetumomenna mo ala assistant nolanko yetumomenna ateyo kumakang lumoy wotumole.
He said, when I had the conversation, I wasn't happy because I knew what they were up to was nasty, but I couldn't intervene. I just kept quiet.
Ako biringal la moy la kumol la hanfu ngambandi aketanyi ni kuya bati amandi anya ferenkatu ngalonko ibe fero le sitika memu fere jaupati bari wairi mandabula je kuma mamfonye wala namfana ngande bari amandi anya fereng.
He said the issue is beyond Babukar himself. Please, I'm begging you, don't reply to that letter.
Akonye ngotu mole konyin atambita Babukar fango kumolale woto mbedani la kana o letter o jabi.
But I wasn't bothered about that. When we did our round, I came home. I went to the High Court. I had cause to meet the master, Usman Jammeh. I said, Master, did you read Babakar's letter? He said, yes. In fact, that's a matter I want to discuss with you. He said, as a matter of fact, just 2 days ago, I met Babakar at the petrol station. He said it was just a coincidence. We both entered the station. We wanted to fill our vehicles. He said, soon as he saw me, he alighted his vehicle. He came down to my vehicle, telling me, this is your magistrate. It's been a problem for us now, but we will get him. Biringate lota dong ayenteje ajitala moto kono na atantela mototo akavo nyenko alanyi magistrate kari mole me ya lonko akitamo kolengol tibari mbulobe lala kanne. So Usman said, please don't reply to the letter because if you do, it's dangerous. Usman konyan dukare kanela letro jabi niyake asikeno ku kolengoti. So he felt threatened that it was time that I should be transferred from Masakongo. Ate konyi ya de unne hanfo because he knew that I will definitely have problems with the soldiers in Farafenni on the ground. So when I came home, I discussed the matter with my dad. He told me, when you narrated your episode, I knew somebody was behind it all. It was not just a mere coincidence. Birin saita su ngakuonyin Kenya be kachampa mae. Akonya ngalonne amanke kukense otide amanke kuti fananka foko kole meneng akulu benta ngalon ko mole be akuonyin koma. So that was the issue. I didn't want to pursue the issue any further because it coincided with my transfer, and that was the end of the Masakongo episode. Wolem konyindi yo manna bula kono makoteke katu yente saundi wole nyama yembondi mansa konko bitun konyim fananata dede la wole nyama.
And Mr. Touray, you've already alluded to the fact that you accept that you are a strong-headed individual.
Mr. Touray, sontolo ite multimia ekungo jata bakele bokasong.
Or perhaps someone would say stubborn.
I'm not strong-headed, neither am I stubborn. I just feel I should not be intimidated in any given situation.
Amanke kunjati, andunga manke kanja fananti. Barintanga nyine mutako, mu manya nante silandila ku kense mokango nyadoro.
But in fact, your recalcitrance and your defiance to the dispensation at the time attracted the attention of the big man himself, as the otherwise known as Oga.
Comme ila manyani ika balanyami wayati na le fola bongo fon mi yalonko wala mata masakunda la na teke moti mi yalonko ay abotela ku kalama.
Ikafai Oga.
Yes, he made a statement about me a couple of times.
Sinyafula akadia mu andunga kakuma fo ntela kuoma.
I remember the Abasanyang incident that I took to the court. The elders of Buyam and Kankuntu went to meet him after the elections. And I saw that program over the television. Part of this discussion was to reconcile with the Buyam community for the unlawful arrest and incarceration of Abba. Programu la fanna do bije wala mnyintiko isakata ye muru nyokang ye badi ya choki ka foko abasanya na muto aketa kuleti romme ya lonko aketa le barbitun isi muru nyoka ye akuo landi ye badi ya julo luchoki. On that occasion, he made a statement. He said what annoyed him most was the fact that when Abba was arrested and detained, he did not opt for any other lawyer but one who does not only hate his government but does not like him in person as a human being.
ako me yate dimen kuo kono biringo kuo keta ye loya men bula akonyi noma wala memba kito nyin tamandikan atata ke moleti me yalonko amari amanda nyinna ko amalla finna man sakundala bari mole munyinte wo me yalonko ayente fango kumole kong ay naman sakunda kong bari konante ya fango asembo abentele nokan.
So Jammeh himself perceived you as a personal threat, as an enemy.
He said it many times. But I wasn't bothered about it, quite frankly. I remember when we had the Pasala Jan case. I traveled to the provinces with my mother-in-law, my wife's mother. The British High Commission was concerned about my personal safety because they made inquiries and all the answers were leading to the conclusion that they didn't, all the people they contacted informed them that they didn't know my whereabouts, so they were concerned about my personal safety. British High Commission
nako ya mbake atena donyolu katu na tamo biri manje mankalangolong akokete mbate ando ya nyininkarolu kedamen no beto dinkiraman soto mensi kumako yo fae bituntela yemango wonya aketa kole ya bati.
Sorry, it was the Shayedi affair of the European Union. Alexandro Mariani, who was asking about my whereabouts.
Okay,
sorry about that.
Among British Online Commission, Alexandro Mariani, Woleba ko no masata kanung, Wolem European Union, Wolem Europe Banko Laden na Kafuba, member Siring wo Kafo Toya la Gambia Jang, Woleba ko no makanung, Woleben na kunyinin ka kanung.
So when I came from the provinces, it was D.A. Jao who got me on the phone.
Rimbotanam bolongo kono wasilo nseitanang, kafome D.A. Jao wole kumandi telefonoto.
And that's the former Minister of Information.
And then Minister Tijang Memmarta Kibaro Lula.
And he said the European Union Shayedi affair has been asking about you and wanted to see you. He said, I will call him to tell him that you are around, you are in town.
Akonyang wotumoleko. Membe siring jang abe maraling Europe tundo la kulula abe karafari kul be karafari ngatela mafolo nyin tembeng amari be nyinin ka kanne nu ngabe nyinin kan yo bar bitun silan wairi e ngeje mbe akumandi la nga fayam ko ina tale kadwa kalafta diamule yende mba fala ina tale bijam.
So I went to meet him in the office. Then the office was in Banjul.
Utumole mwulita ntata bayindi katala office oto utumo ila office obe Banjul.
When I met him, he asked me if I had wanted to relocate to any of the countries in the West.
ibela finale kata si banku kan akata banku o bankuti menketa tubabu banko law tiliji ma fangoti.
He expressed concern about my security.
Ayala daunda itandi ntefango kungola tanko kama.
He said we don't have consular services here, but rest assured, wherever you want to go in the Western Hemisphere, I will talk to the embassies and they will give you a visa.
Akonyante lajang mambunda sotome yalonko woleka odoku fasongolu tamandi tamala la kolu consular services akonyam bari ijuso tenkundi hakilo tenkundi ite lafta tala dawo bankolu kan ndebe diamula wala ambassador yenne kaje ko ko men nyanta topoto layte ya be topoto fo ila tasi sono ya.
I told him I was not leaving the Gambia under any circumstance.
Kaya mampare Gambia bulala ntita dawo ko kunding ba koma mbetula janne.
And Mr. Touray, you said time and time again that you were not intimidated.
No, certainly I was not.
But it was clear that your personal security and safety was under risk.
Yes, that's quite true. Because whilst in Mansakonko, one day in the afternoon around 3:30, the officer commanding the NIA came in a rush to my residence. He said he had intelligence from the Director General in Banjul that the July 22nd boys in Soma were preparing to come and attack me in Mansakonko.
Yekulo kibaro soto kaboila korda bato Banjul ko July 22nd la molu meni alonko ibe wotundo kan Soma je ana dalo lulaibe pareka na purkana boyinte kan.
Please give us the names of the NI officer in Mansakonko and the DG at headquarters?
I wouldn't be able to remember his name. He's a fuller man, but I think it's Mr. Jallo. He was the director of the NIA in Mansakonko at the time. Sorry, the officer commanding the NIA in Mansakonko at the time.
Aseke ngafili atona kontonga mabari ngamira
Mr. Jallo.
Ngamira Mr. Jallo le wotembo atele marta NIA eulula atele mwila nyaton koti Mansakonko tundo kangotumo.
Who was the DG at headquarters?
Jumali la kuntonkoti ila makama bato.
This was in 1995-96. I wouldn't be able to remember.
Nyimu 1995 kata 1996 sangole kono dal hakilo mamari muta memwila kuntonkoti Director General NIA ila suba kono.
So he said he was assigned to come and provide security for me. I told him I don't want any government security.
Ako ya tebula nyine la pro ayena pro kante kanta fonsi tanka. Nkaye malafi mansakunda la kantari wo kantari la pro kantanka.
He said, but if anything happens to me, he was going to be held responsible. I said, even if I'm going to die, I'll use my blood to vindicate your name. I'll write that it was my decision that I didn't want security.
Ako nyambari ninku kitetela, wairi yentele bula ite kantola. Ha, ni kuketetela woto nte adunobe lala ntele kande. Nkaye hanni mfata. Yelo mbele tala ngasafero kala kaitandiko ye itema mfewo fenke nte fango la manya mfango la kango wole nsindi jamu hanifo kuketana mbete sene andilale.
I said to him, let me send you back to the same July 22nd boys in summer. Tell them if they are prepared to come, they must equally be ready for burial from 5 p.m. to Isai prayer time. I said, if only they decide to come, let them be rest assured that there will be burial in this place from 5 p.m. to SI prayer time. So when I told him that inside my parlor, he looked at me, he was stunned, he couldn't say anything. I said, just go and convey that message.
Mbesiri na salo le kono utumo. Ba biringa yin kuma kangulu faye nkaye nko. Mfana mbete fanankila o July 22nd molu kang. Afoye ni pareta wairi kweka parele kana boy inte kang. Afoye ni pareta inata. Hanufoye mambo inkandiro bai. Woto be bade o kelale kabo talalulu alansara wato hanifo safo sali wato abebe kela bade olete nsi ifana yo ko indi tolo man defana mbete kila yo kibaro fo itoliye.
So Mr. Touray, you're not only a warrior in the courtroom but also at the battlefield.
I mean, I know as a matter of history that war is all about propaganda. So that was my own propaganda to them.
Ndayalon tariko ni tariko lon ya jube. Kelolu be propaganda wale mkuma ba fo ka ferolu fo menu ya lon ko itesi tukuno menu la isi juno menu la abebe dendi ngole bala.
That was the end of that episode.
Wo ko banda wale to.
Let's go to your next destination, your next postings. Where was that?
I came to Bundum, but Bundu was absolutely quiet. This was after all the elections, and there was no trouble around the country.
And so it was only during the elections that trouble brewed?
No, that's when they reached their height.
And that would be as a result of political...
Yes. But the life of magistrates in those days, it was, you were permanently confronted with one challenge or the other. So I left Bundung, I went for my bar, I came, I was posted in Basse. Okay, when it was when I was posted in Basse, the people in Basse, the July 22nd, got to know that I was the one who was supposed to go there.
July 22nd la molu menu beje inata lon ko wotumole ko yara yentele nati je fanan yentele samba nam Basse kitibunda la je.
When were you posted to Basse?
What did you want to sound the Basse?
This must have been in 1999, 2000, because I spent 14 months in Basse.
Ngamira kabo 1999 kata 2000 karunga kartan ni nani leke Basse sanji killing karfula.
So Banta Kamara made the delegation. They came and met the Chief Justice and said they didn't want me in Basse.
Banta Kamara ay molu kafunyoma ye molu wulindi kana Chief Justice kang kafayen ko mansula ntela Basse man lafin naje.
Who was Banta Kamara?
Banta Kamara.
Banta was the chairperson of AFPRC in Basse, and he was a member of the July 22nd. But he was a highly influential person.
Banta le mum July 22nd kafola siran TOTJ wotundo kang adu mole fanamu me yalonko atobota bake ala ko sembo warta ma famala molu kono.
I think at some point he even became vice president of APRC.
Andu ngamira wati soto ndafang ye palaso di ala me yalonko wolem APRC patio nyina president nolanka makamoti vice president.
So they met the Chief Justice and told him, but the Chief Justice told them that, look, we don't have any other magistrate we can post in Basse for now, except Mr. Touray.
Brio for Chief Justice ye. Afana ye jabi nyine la ko ngonko. Nyin tembe magistrate do sotombe men sambara Basse Mr. Touray kola.
At that time there were a lot of problems in Basse.
Andu wotembo kukole njamal lebe Basse
pertaining to the image and integrity of the court itself.
Men tilinta kiti bunda fango lanya ning a Kenya la kolu belari nje nyame.
And Usman insisted that it was me and me alone who could go and stabilize the place.
Usman fanambalanta akontelamu ntedda manne fanamu moti men sitano je ka kata kakulu tembendi je ke laku.
And why do you think the APRC party were resistant to you coming there?
Manat naite fe APRC la patio moli be balanko ita manyana tala Basse.
Because Banta had this very unfortunate privilege of controlling every magistrate who was posted in Basse, but he knew he couldn't do same with me.
Kadu Banta otumo nyinketa koma sayoti magistrate men be kata Basse ikatara bulole kono atele ka tamandi ulbe kan bari ate Banta na talon ko ntede ndemu moleti me yalon ko ayodolu maranyame ngate ate kuno lantema.
I've never met him in life before, but from what he has been hearing from people and so on and so forth, in fact, I understand when they came, they asked him in the Chief Justice's office, the CJ asked them, why didn't you want him to be posted in Basse? He said, we understand this man, nobody can manage him.
Katu wato men itil tatantila okodia mo fangola Chief Justice ya. Atade atamu moleti nte fangona te kumo nena manyoje wotumo nena mambem follow. Bari la kumodante Chief Justice ye. Ayenye ninka ko enko sang atelu mule mualla balandati muna nali mallafi nyim magistrate la pra itara Basse ya jabi men na wolem nyinti ko nga nyin kibaro moyle molem nyinti me ya lonko mo buka malankunno ndunta malankunno la wodalilo le ya sabu mallafa laji.
So he was under the wrong notion that magistrates were supposed to be managed or controlled.
Well, that was a well-established tradition. It's most unfortunate that if you go to Farafenye, Sambujang had control. If you go to Basse, Banta had control. So there were these power barons all across the country, and every civil servant for that matter, if you go, you must go pay homage to them. So he realized I wasn't going to be the one to be controlled.
Wotembo kube kerimbanko kang nim Farafenye mafangolom Sambujanjang le ebetar la wole la marokoto nim Basselom ebetar la banta kamara la marole koto andungo tembo amanda itella banko fanna jama bije molu bije men keta mo sembe malti moto boringolu inio sembolu be siring itele nyino motako ko kundi nafuta itella tundola itella kamole nyanda tamala andung wotumo Basse banta nala mole ya lonkonte dum itewole sotono lantela itente malankunnola hanu fo fanglu ya lon walanna itata Chief Justice ya ko man lafin laje.
So finally I went to Basse.
Bitun nata Basse wo kamale kan.
So we were there doing the work.
Bijembe do ko ke kang.
Until when one day,
Folunkiling.
my wife called me on the phone and told me that
Namuso yang kumandi telefono to ay nyim fonye ko.
that UDP delegation came there on a campaign.
UDP la kafomo lunata campaign la je.
And somebody was killed.
Andu mo sotonta ye memfa je.
And she's been hearing that they will take the matter to court.
Andu abe nyim moy kanko iba ko kito sambala kiti bundale la.
So she told me to be careful.
Akonye bitu isi hakilotu.
Told her I'll do what is right,
Nka mentilinta mbe wole kela.
no matter the consequence.
Aketa ko kundinti tonya mbe tamala wolela.
So I went to Basse,
Ntata basi.
and 25 people, including the United Democratic Party, were arraigned before me.
Momo ani lulu kono UDP la molu inata wolle londi nyati lingula.
24 members of the UDP and the United Democratic Party was also charged.
Momo ani nani ye wolle kalame ke tumi andu inata UDP party o fango fanan charge.
The party itself, as
Party
an
itself
institution, was charged with a criminal offense.
Was the 25th accused person, United Democratic Party.
Ye momo ani nani le kilin tumi imanda woto party o fango mu mewo UDP party o fango mu mewo wole keta mu ani lulun jangoti ye tumiro la menka.
Can you give us the criminal analysis or the analysis of that under criminal law?
Isa fonye bang, isa fonye no wokol, isa temeno ya fonye komenina ta kuja barala la kuoto luala fanala.
As to whether or not a company or an organization can be charged with a criminal offense.
For kasene andi for doku dinkra bunda wala patio isa tumino le ko ay fenne ke mi an kuja balem luala fanala.
Yes, in law you can charge a corporate personality.
Ha, luala Carola. Isi bunda ba molu isi tuminole.
When I say corporate personality, means a company or a registered entity, you can charge them with a criminal offense.
Ninko company wolem doku bunda ba wala meyalonko aketa kafuleti mensafeta isi tuminole o kufosongola.
Would you in that process have to lift the veil of incorporation?
For kang inyanta ka fengo bone mi alonko wole ye mura. Enyanta ko bondile saje se maril nyum tumino banke samba kiti bongodo wala ka tumiri jawla kan ko ku jaw baleke.
No, you can charge them directly without in fact lifting the veil of incorporation. The lifting of the veil of incorporation takes place under civil procedure.
Wo isi tumino le luala silo la satara ima ilawo muraram fano boykang. Wo muraram fano kau boykang ukana wati la ning ayatra kota ta futa hanfo silang aketa lankene makoti meya lonko nyin silang kunyanta tamala jele utumo lo isila o muraram fano bondi.
In that case, you would only be able to fine the company. You would not be able to impose a custodial sentence.
Yes,
I'm doko wodoku bundani seminkeno isafo ene ko nyanta ko dole jola bara komita fulano ko be sila dula kriye wala ye sorom.
Yes, you are perfectly right. But you see, when you charge a corporate personality, you can only do so in relation to corporate matters. For instance, where there is negligence on the part of a body corporate and it has resulted to damage, or where, for instance, fraud has been perpetrated by a corporate body. But a matter pertaining to individual liability, such as murder, I mean, that's not within the corporate responsibility of a company or a registered body. That was just the highest degree of manifestation of vendetta against the UDP as a political entity.
Mbetembo mento utumo ni be misali kama bunda ba kitindila. Ibe kitindila nyina kan ni misali kama tinyari keta wala kasara keta wala ku keta amunta kitindi bunda nying ibe duno lala wolle kan andu iduno me ba lale kan kuluro to wolem ibe kolole jola wala ye alaman yo baribitum italiye ko wulindi nyaming buruka patio fango kumo samani weme yitandi wolem nyinti ko itelu laf ibe kamfarin patio nyin kammale ila fitajulu jo kolengo lala patio kan wala na patio fango samani.
Was the leader of the UDP party also charged?
For patio nying kuntonko nying UDP la patio kuntonko for ya fana 2 mil bang.
Mr. Dabo was accused number 1.
Mr. Dabo le mo follow ti 2 mil la tamenka.
So it was one Sergeant Trawale who mentioned the matter before the court.
Ka for me Sergeant Trawale wole nyin ko lumemba kitila wole akumo fo kitibunda nyina.
He came and made a submission, very brief, that they have started investigations and the investigations are not concluded.
Anata ay diamu sutu nekije ko yela kisikisirolu damu tale ko nyin kono andu law kisikisirolu mambam folo.
So he also raised the issue that bail murder is not bailable by the magistrate courts.
Ay nyim fanam fojere ko pour ka o molu bail magistrate kitibunda te wolu bail nola.
At that point, Mr. Touray, did you have jurisdiction to actually entertain a murder case?
Mr. Touray, for wato nyun kono. Wato mina ye wokiti onyi nati nyati wodiamo nati nyati fo wato yesembo sotola no prise la moeno kiti onyi tanya la bon fe ebe kiti bunda min do fo yesembo sotola proko we la moy wokiti ola ban.
No, I could not hear the substance of the charge murder before me, but the Criminal Procedure Code had been amended, and if I can remember, I believe it must be around section 285A, wherein power has been conferred on magistrates. When a charge is brought before you, i.e. a capital offense, which you cannot prosecute or which you can hear and determine, and the matter is under investigation, power has been conferred on you to remand the accused persons in custody pending the completion of the investigation.
Wotumo falon ketale luala tukundo to o kufa songolo to ndebe tembo mendo wotumo tumiro nyim mem fon fota nte o kisikisinola bari bitu nyin sembo ila o falingu me yake wonya woye sembo dinale pour akonyin menu misali kama meni alon ko wolle keta moluti menu ba ko kono misali kama ko mo fa men keta wonya wo molu nseri man no le ke sambari man hanfo jannin ko nyimbe bola nyoto wairi wotembo iko abe kisikisiro bundale to.
Was it preferred by the prosecution or the government at that time to actually make use of that provision to get especially politically motivated detainees remanded in Mile 2 rather than perhaps to go straight to the High Court where bail could be applied for and given?
Fo ikaga min kamba coming kitindir la ñu wollem police olti fo akabo mansala blo kono president wala karola pre isaje ko mol mi yalon ko ini mansa dunta ñola politiko la fanal isaje se keno moti mi iso luanyinta ya landi kan isaje se sindino dulakilim fo wato mi yalon ko isa ibela case ñin sawndi la kasamba kiti bato.
Government's drive simply was to secure a remand order against the accused persons. That was their
Mansa kunda hamumu membe tinu ngotumo puruka nyimolu mutake sambari man kasola wala muite langani yoti nunro.
Because at the relevant time there was filed a bail application before the High Court by Mrs. Denton.
Katu tembo abekela tumo mengo yatara Mrs. Denton ay bail kaito dundile foka pare kitibunda batu.
I was then not even aware of that.
Utumo ndema hani bo kala mafang.
So they were competing to get an order remanding the accused persons before any possible granting of bail by the High Court.
Ibe nyoba sabangole la nungotumo puru isinyum molu sambano riman nyadi janneng wo bail kaito la kango be dunna hanfo janni be londila puru satara itele nyilu dundiri man itel bole nyosa bangola nungotumo.
Because it was also a settled practice of the government at that time that when people are charged with capital offense, they will rush them to a magistrate court, get an order of remand, and even after the High Court would have granted bail, they would still insist, they will still refuse to release them, and they will be justifying the detention on the basis of the order of remand made by the trial magistrate, when in fact the High Court has already granted bail. We had incidents of that nature in the past.
Wotumo kuolu men kake ninku keta durong men keta o kusangara ni mfasongoluti itele kake nyosa bangoleti puruka kuta mandi mensi ke dalilo ti puruka nyimolu mutake sorong riman katu ikatara muna nyosa bankang janim bel kaito be dadala kabo kitibunda bala puruka foko kanyim molu bel itele ka katale hanu fo itele o molu dundi riman nin kaito hanin kaito natabo kiti bunda bala pour que nyim molu bel e kalo mune kan ha wayatarle wotambitale wotarditale wayatarle nyim molu la ko ye dundiri man foka pare andum ila hanin yo ka kawleti pour que molu mutakasola.
To give the issue of bail some context here, because we discussed the issue of the decree number 1 suspending the constitution. This was after the transition had actually finished and the constitution was back in its rightful position.
Yes, this was in 2000.
Yeah, so therefore there was a right to bail.
2001, yes, I believe, 2001.
There was a right to bail. And
there was a right to bail.
Even in murder cases, unlike what operates today.
Yes, there was a right to bail in murder cases.
2001, nyanto bijele, hanimo fa kito, isa mari bail nole.
So the whole idea was, because the investigations are not concluded, and I cannot grant bail, it's a subordinate court, I don't have power to grant bail, they thought the only option available to me was to remand them, and I refuse.
Wotembo, wairi kitibunda la ko amamfuta auto follow, itella hamo moment nyindro, yenyine lom, yenyine mutakonte, sembe doten na katu, ntebe kitibunda mena omu kitibunda ndingulti. Sembe doti je animfere doti je fonga nyimolu samba riman itelebela firin wolela wolanna ye kolu tamandi onya tarinke puru nyimolu sitari man jannin kiti bunda babe ku tamandi laji.
Did you have a discretion to do so despite the law that provided that you should remand them?
Foyo sembo suto le proko ga atarafa loi be lor na miya foko nyanta kes sindi dula clean.
Yes, I am convinced I have a discretion because if you look at the law across the Commonwealth, especially in Kenya, you can meet a judge in his house over the weekend and move your bail application.
Ha, ngamere otembo nsi okenole. Katunia jube Commonwealth banko lukang. Sako banko membe ke Kenya, membe ko Kenya. Isita akitindirila kane ala bungo fango kono. Hani watu memmanke doku watu tifang kafo lokum bandulateng weekendo. Ina ya kacha andu isi kaito dundino me yalonko mu bail kaito leti.
But looking at the statutory provision itself, did that give you room to exercise that discretion?
But say na loi ni jibe loi min lota fo e wo sembo dilal bam priya wo ke bam.
That statutory provision was provided only for situations and the power was to be exercised only in good faith, not in bad faith.
Sarto membelari waka wole nyindi ko nimbata mandila. Abe tamala ngania senu ngania kendo le kang bari mota tamandila nyinkanko kuruya ibole tamandila ji wala ngania jawya ite okela ji.
It was not a witch hunting it was not a provision intended for the state to victimize anybody, but it was meant to be exercised. That power was meant to be exercised in good faith.
Kulo me alonko amanke ko ya wulinyine kama kudo bari bitung wotembo wolem nyinti ko mo manjan na bulala mo noma kala bom feño noma pour ka nambara bari bitung hanni ba sarto fanan tamandila nyanta kala kusenu ngule kan anengani ya senaya.
But again, under the law,
bari kota ke loi koto
when a matter comes before me as a magistrate,
ninko na tante kan ko ntemu magistrate leti
and I don't have jurisdiction over it,
andung asembo tentela pour ka ko tamandi
I have a power to transfer it to the court having jurisdiction.
ngani sembo soto le ka saundi ka samba kiti bunda do la mene ya sembo soto,
And that was the power that I exercised.
bitu wo sembo mfanan tamata wolela.
And I referred the matter to the Chief Justice in Chambers to sit over the issue of bail.
Samba Chief Justice la office to police quota mandimental bail kola.
And I expressly ordered that the accused persons be escorted under the command of the officer commanding police, Basse Division.
And Longanyan Kamala Fanandundi Nola Jeko Nimolu, Nibe Sambala, Mosi Samba Mensi Kanta, Meya Lonka Bekela Alifala Kamaleka Memu, officer commanding Basse Tundola Police Bundala Carola.
And I also further ordered
that
they be taken to Banyul Police Station,
Police Station,
be detained there overnight. I further ordered him to bring them before the Chief Justice in Chambers the following morning. And I further ordered, on no account, should they be detained in Mile 2 prison or in any other location other than Banjul Police. Because I knew that they would not have been tortured in Banjul Police. The general public would have had access to them. At every time of the day or night. So, following day I was sacked again.
Mr. Touray, indeed you were able to be very creative with the law as a magistrate, it seems, and you were able to use the gaps and the lacuna in the interest of victims and to secure justice rather than applying the law strictly in a technical sense.
Yes, because if you are right, if you look at the setting in Basse at that time.
Mr. Touray, Wotembo, eketa moti menyamenta afereta akalango warata.
I believe
lawo sartolu menu yelandi yesilo lu sotolebe dunne kono nyamen kan ngojing kela kwota mandi luanin tilim kan hanu foyete lafta e kenyamenga yo silota. Bari sedo fana ya jabi nyina kai Wotembo, aha.
If I had exercised the other option of remanding them,
ninga nyin kando ta purke sambari man,
I would have been a charlatan in the society today.
Amonta biitilo mbekela moto kuyari mbaleti jamakono.
Because the setting in Basse,
the
climate of fear and intimidation was too great.
And there
was no opportunity how they could have gone to Janjambure without any one of them or all of them being tortured.
Satara itelukono hani mo kilinti je mamenta jire ya wala ka fo itelu mo besi tanka tajire yama wotakela nung fereti je fo bulo elar kilinkang wala ye beta jire ya.
So that warranted your second dismissal.
Wala ya tine nate by fulanjang.
Yes.
And this time did you escape? Did you come back? This time did you have a chance to petition the president and come back to the judiciary?
You wati do foi nata silo sudo pruka sefer ke kata president kang pruka murunan judiciary bank kiti dulato.
No, as a matter of fact, Justice Lati, who was the Chief Justice at the time,
ni kol kata nyame wotumo Justice Lati wolem Chief Justice Wotembo
prevailed on me to write a petition.
Ayenyi la lotan kanga konga petition safe wolem kam fanana kala American lu safe.
And there was so much pressure on government also. They were going to yield, in my humble opinion.
And wodumo yaman sakunda fanan detendide ye detendi bake hanufo atata findi ko fanalu si sonno le kolula pour nte la taram fambulo kama.
But I was not interested in continuing on the bench.
Bare amanna kenna la fonna koti pour nga continue kiti tamando la wo bunda la bench nyinto.
I remember many of my friends and brothers called me to congratulate me, and one of them happened to be Baba Gale Jalo, whom I met this morning here. And when he called me on the phone, he told me, "Congratulations for your redemption."
Hakilo baka ntero lu nkafunyolu mo jamalu yen kumandino tumo kan konton kan jay fanan kolu lanya kama andugol kono mo kilimbije me yalon ko ka fayne babagalle jallo ala yake biñin sumanda fango na benta jang andum biringa yen kumandino ayen kontonne ayen jay akonye puru ila kolu lanya kama.
So your dismissal in essence was a blessing in disguise.
It was. It was indeed, because the government would have been compelled, because the magistrates also had an emergency meeting and they were going to take a position if I was not reinstated back, and they couldn't have contained the situation. But I just decided that the time is up, I have to be on my own.
Akatano nyame wotumo bengo keta ko kamale dia molu keta kato dumo nyaton ko dolbije men yalon ko leftal num fango pour ye ben ya ko dia mu pour yente murundi bar bitun tele nata jube nko amansi o beto ndenga ko tujele drongam fonyo wole mundela kairoti wodadi lo le yasabu nga ko tutulaje.
But the case of Mr. Dabo brought 3 changes in the law.
But Mr. Dabo la ko ay falin sabale nati loi la karola.
And that answers one of your areas of concern, legislations which have been passed to stifle the rights of the citizenry.
Wo ay lañu karo fanna do jabile wala ñinti ko wo fanna kilimbi jeme yalon ko ka molu da sorong menna wala ka molu da suki lu ala karola pour ñin kamala telu si sa wosoto wolula ayo bunda falin.
The Criminal Procedure Code was amended 699.
Andum ku kurungulu tamandi kiti bunda ñim fanan falimo keta jele 699.
The right to bail was taken away in respect of capital offenses.
Inata bail ko bondi yow buruka ka foko ning amari ku jaw baleke ku jaw kunton ko e ka fo me capital offense wala mo fa na nyon doluti bail rote keno la yow bondi je bail ko bondi wol kono le.
By this time, Mr. Dabo and his team were already granted bail by the High Court.
Bari wo bekela tumo men wo yatara Mr. Dabo na la ka fo molu High Court ye bail di wala tumo.
So we are still faced with that problem. If you are charged with murder or manslaughter now, you don't have bail.
Limbide wo kole ako ben kanjanne hanbi katabula bila niye mutammo fala ite bail no la hanbi wala beloring.
So that particular section 99, was designed to actually prevent Mr. Dabo and Co. from getting bail from the court.
Yo lua bunda min londi wanyama yo min fali wanyama ya kele pour Mr. Dabo ana monyoli kana bail sotono.
That's quite true.
Was it passed before the application for bail came up, or the ruling, or after? It
came after bail was initially granted by Justice Monahan.
Anata wato mengo yatara Justice Monahan ye bail kango di nyililele foka pare wokola long yin kaunata.
There was then a pending appeal before the Gambia Court of Appeal against the ruling of Justice Monahan.
Andu wotumo balango be dending wo bail kunyala kitibunda bato kabalang Justice Monahan la wo bail kuola.
The state succeeded in that appeal.
Bitum mansanata silo sotone wo sainkandiroto.
But the justices of the Court of Appeal again tied the hands of the state not to re-arrest and detain the accused persons. The respondents in the appeal. That's Mr. Dabo and his group.
Kitindila mbeje woto fanana kaumenta mandi wala mnyentiko ikana wo kudendingo jindi na waira abe dendi ne follow purunyin kamala Mr. Dabo na kafunyolu ikanana wolu sainka muta ni ebula ke bail ni ebula.
Okay. The other aspect of the law that it affected was on jury trial. The 1997 Constitution provided for jury trial.
1997 Constitutional. When kalin ne ko kito dul se kenole jury trial te wala mo jama kasi ka kito kuntu.
I remember when Mr. Dabo and his co-accused persons were arraigned, they refused to take their plea because they said they needed to see the law that was going to be enacted on jury trial.
Biri telunati Mr. Dabo na la molu ibalanta le katu muneketa ikoy lafta lonnale loi nying membe ako nying koma abelari nyadile menketa jama kitindo la karolati ikafome jury trial.
That also delayed the commencement of the trial in the murder case itself.
Wala fanana take kuti wala o balango wala kolu dukundi wala ka mendi puru kito nying menketa o mofa kito nying janabe datila ay watita.
And what was the essence of that particular amendment?
The Constitution provided for a right to, it gave a right to accused persons to opt for jury trial. That was a constitutional provision.
Constitutional in sembo di molulale pour isinyin kaning pour ni bela ko kitila asike mo jama kito di mo jama sisi akito kunna ikafame jury trial. Constitutional yo sembo di molulale men ba mutokon.
So, but then it further went on to state that Parliament should prepare the enabling legislation.
Bari kontinenta kanyum foko dibite bungu nyanta fere kelale ye loi dada me ya lonko wala be kala kulu sono ya ndirawti wo sarto la karola.
That law had not been enacted by the time the accused persons were arraigned before the High Court.
Among la soton follow dame ya lonko isa tamandinu na okiti bundala ite lakoto otembo.
Like I said, that delayed the commencement of the trial for a while. I'm not very sure, but I have a feeling that there was an amendment that came. I have confirmed that.
But whatever the case, it's clear that jury trials do not actually operate in the Gambia as we speak.
But the court said la no nyanya dorong alon tala senya telefona ko coming ka kitindira jama me bendi pour yemo kitindi na kuntundiro o mu feneti mi alonko abuka kenyim banko kanyang.
We used to have jury trial. Along the line, it was taken out.
Neneka kitindiro kele nungo nyama. Bari bitum bewole kanu wati nata soto ya mumeo bondi ya buruka.
But it was brought in by the 1997. It was brought back by the 1997 Constitution.
But the 1997 Constitution wale ya Murundi nang.
But it was not in practical operation because as we speak right now, it is not something that actually operates in the court system, in the criminal justice system.
That I cannot capture exactly, but there was an amendment. But it was given as a right under the 97 Constitution.
Men tilinta okola bari bitum hakilo mamuta wati men kilimu bari 1997 Constitution ya dabula ndi okono linu.
And would you say that that was also another amendment that was used by the political system to influence or exert greater control over the judicial process because they could control one man easier than they could control, you know, about 20-something or 30-something people, depending on the size of the judicial.
That's quite true. But there was also equally a potential danger. Unless the law was made or was enacted, you stand to your detriment if you opt for jury trial, and then you have a group of July 22nd boys being paraded as jurors before a court.
Wofana as a keno le bari kudo men fana mbeje ni manna manta bengo soto wo moja malu menu bina ka fokete la kitoke ni immantalu walita ite mariye July 22nd la molu nata na beng menge ya lonko iko wolle bete la kito kundula ha bitode obekela kumbaneleti.
Mr. Touray, let's move on.
Mr. Touray, will continue.
To the 2006 court-martial cases. I believe you were representing some clients in that particular court-martial.
Ngata 2006, kitio mialanko wale keta sojaro la kiti bungoto. Nteji kita ko, ite keta multi mialanko ilota moyene pruka fasa ka bondi ya tumi minna.
If we could just go through it briefly, highlighting the issues there of fundamental human rights, violations of human rights, for example, torture and the right to fair hearing.
Anduna telefona sotiandiri kamba isa dungo fana la ye domandi mfonya je ya sotiandi komi nyantol tinyata je nya hadma dungo la nyanto ya tinyanya dile wo kiti bungo nyinto.
Following the 2006 abortive coup.
In 2006 coup d'etat bayringo botala.
The civilians and the soldiers were all charged and they were arraigned before the High Court.
Civilianolu and sojarolu ye betumi ye londi High Court nyatelimula.
The trial in the High Court got stalled because many of the defense counsel withdrew their representation.
Kito nyintamata nyame High Court anasita katu mo jamaa bije meni alonko be lorin tankola karolela woliye da bondije muruta koma.
Why would defense counsel have cause to withdraw their representation for clients that they had agreed to represent?
Monad na sa loyal mi alan ko lota purka mol bondi ye mol mi aye tumile ye nasi kota ya foko e manta lola purka wol lo wol ye kota ye tumindi ko mina monad na obekela.
You know, we had a perception that the judge who was assigned the file had a sympathy for the state.
Ndel nganyina miro sotuno tumo ko jojo wala kitindila me ya lonka belori mansakunda wo nyine banga niyoto pour kama mansakunda fasa.
Which judge are you referring to?
Omukiti tela Jumaldi.
This was the former DPP and then he later became Chief Justice Chief Akomaye Ajim.
ngamera otembo e ka fome chief akomae ajim wole moti me yalon ka martanyin kito lulanya la ngamera utumo wole nyanta lola akito nyin kunto.
In all fairness to him, he hadn't manifested anything to warrant us reaching that conclusion.
Tonya purka tonya tamandi amang kukede mensi otaman sero itandin telula ko alafta fasa rolela.
But take him from the fact that he was the DPP for 2 consecutive terms.
Bari niajube ataketa DPP ti hanu for sanji fula mumeobe.
It was like getting a prosecutor to be a judge in your case.
Amunta kitindirla niyo ta yake ko wale be kito fanan kuntu laitila ko kono.
So because of that long career as DPP and his closeness with the executive, we had fears that the accused persons may not get justice.
Nsilata kadumuna nsilandi anem banko kundonko la kulu katata nyola bake andu wokola fanang anatake moti meta o palaso to DPP palaso so wale nsilandi nga nyimutako nyimmolu ate yamfale.
Mr. Touray, I mean, you do say that you didn't have any cause to believe that he would be impartial in the case, but if you look at his track record as DPP, if he had exercised independence during his role as DPP, I don't think Defense Counsel would have been so anxious about his current position.
Coming iya fo nyame ko coming ife amanke modi mi alon ka belala abu albo monyo doka wala belala mokan bar coming niya jibi ala tariko to kabri wato mi alon ko akata DPP ta abe mol kitindi kan niya jibi kabri wato fo bi fo se ku bonino le kaitandila ko asefasa roke no le ba.
Yes, like I was saying, if you look at the general setting in the country at the time,
Kumba fokan nyame ni ko lulanya jube kenema banko kan wotembo.
Although we were seemingly democratic quote and unquote.
Yo bari bitu otumo menka fo aning menka yitandi wala nyindi ko demokrasi lebe banko kan.
But in reality it was a dictatorship.
Bari to nya tajire mararo lebe kerin nungotumo.
And the dictatorship that came
adungo tajire mararo anatake nyama
post elections
sako karte fayo tambiringo
was worse than the dictatorship that we had during full military dispensation.
Wala fon jawyata tajire ya mararoti wakarte fayo kola ka tambi wato la wato me yalonko abe otumbo hani karte fayo nyim fayo manke folo.
Because he had a long career as a DPP and he had interacted with the state for a very long time, he has defended the interests of the state. So we had a fear that it was all not safe for him to be assigned the case.
Karotembo, ame bata o palaso tole o DPP palaso. Amanda wola anim mansakunda meta nyobulu bakele sako mansakunda kundonkolu. Wodalilo le silango dundintel kono ko woto nyimu moleti me yalonko. Ate tilingo tamandi la nyin safar bundala abe palaso mentuteng ako wotumo birin tilingo silango soton sondomo kono bitungole ya kendidal ntel fanal nga quota wo nyama.
So we raised concerns and we asked him to recuse himself. He refused. So we met as a defense team and decided that some members of the defense team should withdraw just to paralyze the hearing of the matter.
Bitundal kafta nyoma kallo ka fonte lebe lola lebe kala loyalty nyimoli yo bitunga kata puru ate safan da bondi kito nyin kono bari bira balanta andol fanal nata lo bitum meno be loring mutamole nga jibe puru modol fanal bije ye da bondi kito nyin to puru kito nyin silamfu isaje asilamfu nyama me ya lonkatina ate tamanola.
So the state could not proceed with the matter because of lack of lawyers.
Bitum man sakunda man kito nyin tamandino katu man lawyer sotong.
And that was a requirement in capital offenses. That
yes, you cannot proceed to hear a charge against an accused person who is charged with treason unless he is legally represented.
Otembo lawyer nyino foko etembo kitindino la meya lonko lawyer mantara caring mensi lo no atemari ye man sakunda te o mari kitindino la onyama otumo. So
because of the withdrawal of the defense, most of the defense team, the case stalled in court.
katu telefonal man sakunda ta kito nyin tamandino la nimmuta molu man loyal soto membe loleye wala na ta kito nyin nasin lifu amantano.
So they were therefore forced to sever the case file into two. They took the soldiers to the army barracks, that is Yundum, and created a court martial.
Between atamuneke ye ko fata fulat sojarolu membe ko kono yolu samba Yundum pour que kitindi sojar silola goto malu yolla ko landi karala.
Were you in both cases, in the treason trial at the High Court and the court martial?
Both in the treason trial and both in the court martial and in the treason trial.
Don kito nyim fanna fulo benga be mal sojar kitindo la karola ndabi jele ibe kitindi la jamfa jawla tumo men na kabanko jamfa treason ndabe wotule fana menketa moluti civilian oluti yemenu kitindi akokama.
I represented Yaya Dabo in the court martial.
Ndele lota Yaya Dabo ye sojar kitindo nyinto.
And I represented Aliou Job in the treason in the High Court.
Alu ndele lota Aliou Job ye fana High Court jamfa jaw kito la koto.
Were there any things that stood out during the trial, especially in terms of the treatment of the accused persons?
Fo fembi jel mi yalon ko isafo ko wokatala na manyana kake sakatuma nina ta fanna la mi yalon ko wala multi ye mil tumi fo ye kukela mi yalon ko manyana kake
during the pre-trial detention.
O wato ya tara fangi me samba folo kiti bundato ibe mutoko.
Yes, Yaya Dabo, we went through, when they attempted to tender his cautionary statement, we went through a voir dire because it was our contention that the cautionary statement was not voluntarily obtained. They were seriously tortured. So we went into a voir dire. It's a trial within a trial.
Nata osilo leta katun tata muneje Yaya Dabo utumo ngajele ko ye tajire ya bale kala ku dimendingo abe okole kono ngutumo odalilo le ya sabo kon nyin nanta ta nyamin ngake woleti kitibe kiti kono mfanali ngata mandi wala silola.
And the voir dire trial, which is a trial within a trial, was to test the voluntariness of that particular statement to see whether it was obtained, through torture or other forms of duress or undue influence. Ando
niaje aliyewo kiti be kiti kona aliyake wo alefta ka lonne wo kuma kongol mi yalon ko ya wole taw wo momin bulu ye men tumi ya safi alefta ka lon komi yo kuma kongol tabul nyamo fo ya tabul de tolo kono bang abe ya detendile ya ta wala fo ya lipale fo ya tajire yale al kiti yo lefta ka wala long wala na ko kiti nga kiti o ke kiti o kono kote.
Yes, that was the main purpose for a voir dire.
Wala ma dalilo tide pour ka kiti be kiti kono.
And Yaya was the first to go through voir dire.
Yaya lo mo foloti mendunta o kiti fason kono kiti be kiti kono.
What was the strength of his case in terms of his allegations of torture against the state?
Kuma tala diamoni a sembo soto nyale komi ya tumi romin nanu.
I wouldn't be able to remember now the details, but his testimony, I believe, lasted for 4 days.
Hakilo ta akobe mutanola tamata nyami barala kito atatal hanfotil nani.
And because we had fear that the rest of the other accused persons may not have the same opportunity, his evidence was not limited to him in person alone.
Katu man silo soto no kafuta dolu makatu atela kito kono sede yari kolu menu finteta je amandanga te fango kungo dam manade.
Every form of torture, every form of violation, every form of abuse was captured in his narration.
Ala kuma kangolu kono tajire ya faso wo faso nyimantani ya faso wo faso tilimbali ya faso wo faso kujawo ke hadamadingu jatola a façon bele fintita ala diamo kono ye menke ala bringa e bewo muto kono.
Looking at your client and some of the other accused persons, was it clear, was it apparent just by looking at them that they had been indeed tortured?
Komi ita nina ta wo tumir mol jibe anita fongo momi ala ko belori wole fo niya mari jibe do re salon no ko nyinde to nya bulo matala ba.
Yes, indeed. In fact, as at the time when they were arraigned, some of them had their injuries. They had not completely healed.
Katu muna natake hani watu memfongo mbenyin dia mola ni ejube kajele ko nyil molu be mantoro le kono be baramaring katu yatara imahani kende ya fango folo.
I believe Wasa Kamara came here and testified before the TRRC.
Namira Wasa Kamara nata janna CDRO ke TRRC nyati ngule jam.
Wasa was able to pick his broken teeth, you know, in the NIA, in the hall where they were tortured. He had it in his pocket and it was tendered as an item of exhibit in the trial.
Kito kono Wasa Kamara anyingo men katita watu me be nyininka ka ye tajire ya men kela hanufo ya nyingo kati atartala jifo kono le adum watu membe o kito keka wo sojar kito aya nyingo fango bondile alaw nyin katiringo ka ke sede jorangoti kito nyin kono.
We even subpoenaed for the medical record of the treatment, the medical treatment they were subjected to as a result of the torture. And the doctors were willing to come to provide that evidence, but there was state interference in that also.
Na nyim fango kani me yalon ko lemu lopitan kayto luti docteur oli menu safe nyim molie biriyo tajire nya jawo kela ye mantorol nim baladimengulu menu soto adun docteur olu fango paretale wulita pour kana o CDRO ke bari kota ke man sakunda ya dabula je kunduta docteur olu nyato pour olu kana na o CDRO la.
How did the state interfere in that process?
When we prepared our subpoena and sent it to RVH, the place was punctuated by the NIA officers who were there. They physically threatened them that whoever produces those. In fact, the doctors ended up not coming to court. Threatening them not to come to court.
Pour doctorol yena wo ko senendi min fon ke da fon il wo doctorol nyin kaytol min be bulu kay tandi ko tonya nyine keta wi wasa ya nyongo wutole ya lipala nyongo be bota da kono ye silandilo fon ko karo ko momo nata kiti bundato pour kana wo se diandro du ibe bula ngata kono.
How did you come to know about this particular information?
When we file our subpoena, you know very well as a practicing lawyer, when you file a subpoena, you make a follow-up on it. I personally followed this issue at the RVH. And they told us that the NIA came there and took those files away.
Did the voir dire succeed in the end?
Well, the cautionary statements of all of them were admitted in evidence.
And that means it did not succeed.
No, it did not succeed.
Despite the clear evidence of torture in those
it was visible on their bodies. So
in fact, defense counsel had valid fears about the particular judge in that case.
Well, that's quite true.
Can you tell us what happened in the court-martial in relation to your client, Yaya Dabo?
You know, we were all sure they were going to be convicted. Right? But then there was an open discriminatory treatment. This was a treason involving people from every sector of our society. By that I mean all the tribes were involved. During the course of the court-martial, 4 of the accused persons were being chained, that is handcuffed, that is Bunja, Yaya Dabo, Farinsanyang, and Wasa Kamara. We have Bunja, Yaya, Farinsanyang, and Wasa Kamara. Well, the discrimination was quite apparent. We complained about it. Justice Ajim made an order that it's unlawful. It's not right.
Justice Ajim narana kango di tonyala nyung mukul de me alonko amanyang andung nyanta tinyala.
These 4 individuals you mentioned, which tribe did they belong to?
All 4 of them were Mandinkas. So people from all other tribes were part of the trial. It was a large group.
Mo jamal le beje me alon ko mo be membe beje be bora si oledo andu mo jamal dem kafolem.
Our understanding is that it was the head of the army who insisted that those people must continue to be chained.
Nara na nyim faham ko sojaro la kuntiyo nyi wala nara nyim bala nyi nako umol nyanna kala molle me alon ko yetu cheno kono don sitring.
And this was not coincidence this time.
No.
In fact,
I remember at that time we raised the issue. Ajim made a statement that he has made his order, but if the authorities are not going to comply with it, he does not want to take it as an issue.
Kilo bakang sinya samando narna ko nyi wosi dala ko take bare jojo nyi mem Ajim ti ay mem fo wala nyi ko manto nung ay kango dile bar sila ni nyaton ko mang nyi ay kango men di ni nyaton ko mang kanta manda ko nyi do rata ku do keno la je ko take.
And during the actual proceedings themselves, were they still chained?
But for what na kitio nyi fo datita be kerin fo hani wo ye blol city labang.
No, they would chain them in the vehicle according to them in mile 2.
But it only meant for all in the Morocco, no Cabon kasi bumba to bull chain na world Morocco, no?
And then they will bring them up to Yundum barracks.
Ibe not la for Yundum la soja cordado.
They escort them inside the officers' mess where the court martial was taking place.
Sinana is some officers' mess to Damen de Alon Kitio Ningatake or Bunginako.
And thereafter they will remove the cuffs.
Jeto is in a bull chain, bull
When the matter is adjourned, they will again cuff them in the court and then escort them.
Nin Kitio ya lunga sound de Kotangato is na ye bull chain a kotake ye tentendi ye bulani morola kotanke.
And criminal trials in the Gambia are usually done in public, is that correct?
No yalanja nibe mol kitin la mialan ko yokuja leke ikake mol kono.
Can you tell us if anything unusual happened in this particular case?
Yes, on the day of the judgment, as a matter of fact, the whole conduct of the proceedings was done in the open.
On
the day of the judgment, I was the first to arrive. When I reached, they said we were supposed to wait under a tree. So the arrangement was that they wouldn't allow members of the press and members of the families of the accused persons. So I said, if that is the situation, we will boycott the judgment. And after the delivery of the judgment, we will make a statement to condemn it.
Do you know why they took that particular position on this particular day?
From what we understand is that it was the head of the army who was interfering. Because he had a sense of apprehension what would be captured in the content of the judgment.
Who was the head of the army at that time?
It was my own brother, Lantombo.
His full name, please.
Lantombo Ntamba.
And he obviously took direct orders from Jammeh.
Yes, of course.
Okay. How did that end?
Well, we maintain our ground that we will not enter the judgment hall unless all the pressmen who were present were allowed access. And same with members of the families of the accused persons. So they thought we were going to give in, but to their disappointment, we stayed put. When they realized that time was running out, They said now, well, they will allow members of the media to come in. They invited us to go. We still again refused. He said family members must all be allowed in. They said they were not going to do so. We refused to go in. In the final analysis, they were making calls, Office of the President, Army Headquarters. Later they had no choice. They had to allow everybody. And judgment was delivered. But after the delivery of judgment, we filed our appeals. We followed on
you didn't tell us whether the judgment was successful or not.
They were all convicted. And they were giving different sentencing regimes. Some, on some counts, life imprisonment, some 20 years. So we filed our appeals. And I strenuously followed on the records, the appeal records. The file could not be seen anywhere. Not anywhere in the judiciary. Made a personal follow-up on this with the judge advocate. He told me he has nothing to do with the file. On the day he delivered judgment, he gave all the records to the army. I wrote letters number of times, made follow-ups. Nothing happened.
Were you able to proceed with a substantial appeal without those records?
No, we couldn't. Not one single appeal was had. Up to now, we have not set an eye on that file.
And in fact, their constitutional right to appeal was violated.
Certainly.
But
But that was nothing to the government at the time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Touray, there was another case in which you handled where, as a consequence of certain decisions, a particular high court judge, I believe he was a magistrate then, made, he was dismissed.
Mr. Touray, malam fo hakilo bakana bara diamu do kata non kiti bunda to mi alan ko eda kata je wo wato wo mari nying wo munyin kiti ndila dingol lati ka fo e magistrate to amanke no jojo te folo inata na baya la do ko la fo se fem fo no nyawota ba.
Yes, that was the case of IGP versus Keba Conte and Seku Conte.
Ha, walam case di me yalon ko police le ba kono aning Seku Conte Keba Conte to le bo case yi kono.
But let me say before I proceed with that, there was a lot of interference even in civil matters.
Baru nga kumandim fo jandim be ñu mo fulo la case fola folo ku jamal el be jame alon ko dabula jamal el be jame alon ko kake mo damal da case to dabula jamal ka ke akoni to.
It was the order of the day. When you have a matter, a dispute with someone, you just go to any one of these generals.
Ina mun ko nyi tamandiri nyati no jamano lanu ni moye ku lanyo bula nyote madrom e kam ngaro e kata nyi nyato ka kunton ko le kan surtout nyi tanko bunda molla.
And they had no hesitation, they will interfere in the matter.
Andun ku buka hani tongu fang ike dabula ko nyi kono le.
The case of the Conte brothers.
Nyi kontom fulol nyi.
They bought a set, it's their younger brother, one Abdullah Conte. He bought a parcel of land from one Abdullah Cham in Sukuta. They went through the transfer process. Apparently,
Nyato do manding.
Unbeknown to the two brothers, the transfer document had not been completed. The transfer procedure had not been completed.
Fulol memu keba konde se ukonto di nada na fure ila londo ko nyin korda nyin keno de ala saundiro ka bo nyin wafir la kan ka samba sandir la ka ko nyin hansa amanto ben di folode.
When they bought the transfer forms, they paid the relevant capital gains tax.
Biri ye formo sang andu ye transfer cool be topoto andu wolen capital gain tax yo be jo.
They thought that that was all about the transfer process.
So they
took the transfer document and kept it. But it was in the same year of the purchase that they fenced the land. More than 10 years down the line, Abdullah Cham came to the site and said that he did not sell to them all that parcel of land.
Abdullah Cham anata keno nyi dingira nyi to ako amanyi keno nyi dingira yeme be sanzang amo wafi ima.
And the fencing took place
sanzandiro keta
in the year of the purchase.
Sango menna firo keta.
And when they were about to commence fencing work, according to them, they invited him to come to the site for him to confirm that this was the piece of land that he sold to them.
Ya bunyato kumandile ati Abdullah Champura ay nama be dingiranyi ndo pour kay tandala fo ya fay ko dingiranyi fele me wafi ma ndum fele bina damu dal pour ka sansang.
So when he raised those queries that these people have fenced more than the fair area that he sold to them,
biring atena na kumaka nyim fundinde ada kono ka fo ko nyimmolde aledula sansa me alon ko ntenga me wafa altambitale.
He went ahead and knocked down part of the fence. So they lodged a complaint against him at the police. Police went into the matter. They charged him. They took him to the court. When they were taking him, they did not notify the complainants. He went to court and he pleaded guilty. He was cautioned and discharged. The complainants in the meanwhile did not even know that a trial took place. So he then went and filed a civil case against them.
In the
magistrate court. It was in the magistrate court that the two complainants in the criminal charge came to realize that, in fact, their criminal complaint reached the court and was determined.
Kiti bundandingo to la nyimmo fulo mu wosila fulo le nata na lo wolto ko to nyato nya yara fang nyin kes nyin anata nan janna yara fang kiti bulato jande bari ya dundi nin janne ni kuriya silo le baf me criminal court le wo wato le to le yalo ko yara fay nyin kes ya nata nu janne command.
What magistrate dealt with the criminal complaint?
Jumalem kiti lati mi yalon ko wolel sita wo kiti o kundo.
I cannot remember now on top of my head because like I said, the complainants did not know of the trial. It was my humble self who tried to trace the close file.
We
photocopied it, and it was in the file that I confirmed that yes, he has actually been taken to court and he pleaded guilty. I cannot now remember who was the magistrate. But Abdullah Cham did not pursue the civil case. It was struck out. Now with the backing of some people, he went to lodge a complaint at the police. He said the transfer documents that the Conte brothers had, those documents were forged. So the police looked into the matter. They charged the two Conte brothers. And let me say this. that Abdullah Conte, who bought this land,
was
not charged.
And
And the sale took place in his presence. It was his elder brothers, one of whom had custody of the document. It was those two elder brothers who were charged. So, matter started in Brikama Magistrates Court. After the close of the prosecution's case,
who was the magistrate involved?
The file kept changing from one hand to the other. I remember at the beginning it was Manyima, who I think got appointed by the GRA. But then subsequently it came into the hands of Magistrate Jaita, as he then was.
What was his first name, Magistrate?
He's now a judge of the High Court. So he looked through the file after my no case submission.
Just explain what a no case submission is in summary.
No case submission simply is that when the state brings a charge against a person,
no case submission niangwe tu abkamro ni mansa la karola waranto mende tumiro de mokanga ni ara tumiro natina mokang kitidlato.
And the witnesses for the prosecution have all testified. If you consider in your mind that if not made out a prima facie case,
what is a prima facie case?
Prima facie case is to lead evidence linking the accused persons to the offense.
Prima facie case
So you can ask the court to dismiss the charge.
So in essence, the prosecution had not met the minimum requirement in terms of the evidence that they were required to produce for that case.
Amunta prosecution police warando mansala karola itolman kuma hakan sahari ngodi kiti onyati no memba sababu sabula ko pour kiti e la ko nyintu molde tumiro melle kan ye asorata ikanne.
Well, that was our application. Sometimes you succeed on it, but sometimes it's dismissed.
Wala muntu la danir dade wato do ika safaro kel danir la kiti obul wato do ika ganyele bar wato do ika boyle.
So when His Worship Jaite went through the file, he discovered that in fact this land is not situated within the jurisdiction of Brikama Magistrate.
Oh, wato la His Worship Jaite biringa tata enyim file kono be jube aya yele anata na kala mutandi ko tonya nyinke no nyimem fa alon ko abe diamo kono kenele abe dingiral to me alon ko amandra Brikama la kiti bunda dingira kono.
So he struck out the matter.
Anata na case nyimbay.
He was sacked.
Ya bay
he was arrested.
Ya muta.
Detained.
Yeah, Cindy Black.
He was himself charged.
Sorry?
He was himself charged.
Did this kind of thing ever happen before to a magistrate where they were arrested, detained, charged? As a direct result of the decision that they made during the course of their duties?
do ko nyin kono me alon ko wala mu la do ko tamadiri nyaade na nyin ko le ka fo kule me alon ko akela ba.
Yes, it was a common practice
to
sack magistrates.
Okay, but to go to the extent of actually arresting them, detaining them, and charging them. I think that started in the case of His Worship Jaite. But there was a second, there was a repeated incident also. One of our traveling magistrates in Jareng,
na magistrate do beje mena kiti tela do beje malango akatama la kata dinkiralto membe ñu Jareng.
Magistrate Danso
Ikafa magistrate Danso
was also arrested,
adafana ina ya mutale
detained,
ya sindidlo akili
and charged.
ye tumiro le denga kangoda.
In fact, his detention
andung hani kabi ala muto ka sindidlo akili mfa
came during the impasse.
aketa wati la wato men na politiko hata jube hata jiri mbake mbangu kanja wolem December.
It was after Jammeh's departure
andung aketa nyame wolem kabrin ja Jammeh banko bula
that he was released from detention.
wato na ya bula ka bondi mudo kono.
Do you remember the case of Magistrate Jabang?
Foi hakilo si ha magistrate Jabang fanan na ko mutano ba.
Yes, I believe he too
Jikita ta fananta
forgotten about, but I think a similar incident. He was not charged, but he was detained.
ateda man tumir denga kangoda de barata fanan ya mudal ya sindidlo akili.
Can we just look at the last case? Because I'm sure the commissioners want to go home before we wrap it up. Of the NIA Diamond case.
Silanga ke NIA law lulu case ni ngaw jube ba.
The NIA Diamond case,
NIA law lulu ki ko le awni
I got the tip of the information
nga kibaro le sota kono
from one Nafi Jammeh.
mo kilimbulu ga fme na fi Jammeh.
Nafi, I believe, was his Touray Jammeh. He's from Kanilai.
na fi de jikita ko abare musulma te me alon ko ya Jammeh bare musola ndu abura kanilla.
But he happened to have known Dr. Alamin.
Bari aketa Dr. Alamin ay alon
One day in the evening,
lun kiling ularo
she called me to inform me that doctor has been arrested
ay kumandi kan kala mutandi nyinna ko doctor de ya mutale
by the NIA.
andu men ya muta wallam NIA.
And she told me that he has been seriously tortured
akbara nyim fonyale ko yew ya tajire ya bakele de
and that she was afraid that if I did not get up quickly,
andu nga konye ko na be silare nyinna ninga tarante maguli tariyarinke
he could lose his life.
asikeno ay fo ala balwala.
This was in the night.
Nyiketa sutol la
I told her, well, call me in the morning following day tomorrow.
nkai ko silang kumande sama somanda.
As a matter of fact, when I went to office, this was on a Saturday, I forgot about doctor's issue.
Ko nyinku keta nyisu samo keta kulunde me alon ka manke do kulunde de sibitu longale barin kam dara fa nyina doctor fa ngala kula.
So Nafi gave me a reminder call.
Nafinata nan kumande kan hakilo bulandi.
I quickly rushed to the NIA.
Tariyarinke tata NIA law kordar.
When I arrived, I insisted that I wanted to see Dr. my client. I was just arriving when they were closing their main gate. I held onto the door of the gate. The gentleman told me that I couldn't see him. I told him I must see him. If I cannot see him, I was going to petition the Vice President as head of the Security Council to raise my concern.
President no lanko memala bankola Vice President besa fero kala me tumala ben atel be marlen kanto ni tankada bunda mol bela besa fero kala kala mudande.
When I told him that,
he
was overwhelmed. Couldn't know what to say. I said, I must see my client, whether you like it. Then he said he was going to send word inside to the directors if they would give me access. It was the officers inside who refused. I was informed by Nafi that doctor was taken out of the NIA premises in the night because of the severity of his condition. He was taken to RVH for treatment. So Monday, I made contact with the German consulate because there were 2 German nationals involved. Apparently, the NIA gave those people an appointment for them to go back on Monday. So I escorted them to the NIA. But when I reached, I wanted the confrontation between my clients and the NIA officers to be in my presence. Abdullah Kujabi refused. did so with arrogance.
Aya kening telimbali ya fonkono, jawiya kono.
Sangaro.
I left the German nationals there and I went back to the court.
In German banku dingo mol nyebulaje ntata kidillar.
Then I did my investigation.
Ganna kisi
I interviewed them.
They
give me a detailed account of how they were treated. And how doctor was also brutalized. In fact, Dr. Mala told me that the last time he saw Dr. Alamin, he was being dragged on the floor and he was not sure if there was life in his body. Then I decided to write a petition to the Director General.
Do you know the reason for this treatment?
Well, the Germans, Dr. Mahla,
in German Dr. Mahla
Gambia to purchase diamonds.
Another Gambia banko kanjana puruka lulu sang diamond.
He purchased 8 pieces of diamonds.
Pieces say I will sang.
And in fact, he went to Freetown.
Another not Freetown.
Didn't buy the diamonds here in the Gambia.
Sorry.
He went to Freetown.
Another Freetown, Saralian banko kang.
And he purchased the diamonds there.
Ayin diamond ol sanje.
And he was given his certificate of origin.
And we not na nyin kaito dia la member twanyan la ko nyimu diamond ol leti.
He had a friend called Nicholas Westphal.
Nicholas Westphal.
Nicola had a girlfriend.
Nicola sunguro do babulu.
She was the NIA informant. She disclosed to the NIA that these people have money and diamonds.
Would you happen to know the value of those diamonds?
I cannot remember now how much they purchased the diamonds for. There were 8 pieces. So they also had dollars.
Can you just enlighten me, Mr. Touray, because I'm a bit confused. The possession of diamonds, is that a national security threat? Why were the NIA involved?
No, there was no security issue involved.
They
only descended on them to extort their money and their diamonds from them. Because at that time, the NIA enjoy a complete, total blanket impunity in this country. So they were lodged at Senegambia Hotel. It was this girlfriend who informed the officer commanding the NIA in, I think, Badala Park area. They went and attacked them and dispossessed them of their money, $206,000, 8 pieces of diamonds, personal cell phones, and their briefcase.
So the NIA was turned into a criminal gang.
So I wrote a letter, a petition to the Director General, demanded that he should surrender his officers to the Inspector General of Police. That the matter should be investigated. Copied the entire establishment, that is all the permanent secretaries, all the ministers, all the foreign missions. And I blew it in the private media. It was the Independent that published the news. It was a damning revelation against the NIA. Following day, Independent published the dismissal of all the NIA officers who were involved.
Independent kibar bunda ni nar na safaro ke o NIA mi alon ko be bulata ko nyi ngono ko ye be bayle.
But let me say this, that was the first of its kind.
Bar mbadu nganyim fo wala mu koti mi alon ko nyi aku nyon ko keta.
The NIA have never been dismissed for any unlawful act.
NIA li nana me bay baral me alon ko ye baral menke ani luanta ya barole.
Before that time.
Watola.
They've never been arrested for any unlawful act before that time.
Inana me muta baral me alon ko luanta ya barole inana me mutala.
So the government acted responsibly.
They set
up a panel of investigators. And they were investigated. A report was issued. And they were charged and taken to court. And they were prosecuted. And except one, they were all convicted. But one was acquitted on appeal.
What happened to the diamonds?
Still not been recovered. Neither the money nor any of the personal possessions. The German government asserted all forms of pressure on the Gambia government. Through the European Union. Up to now, the diamonds have not been.
Do you have any idea, any rumors about where, in whose hands they possibly could be?
Well, when the matter was going to the panel, one of the officers, NIA officers involved, one of the suspects, sent a friend of his to me. Said he wanted to disclose the location of the diamonds. Who had possession of the money as well. Only if he would get my cooperation. I said, if he was willing to do so, let him do so. I was willing to engage headlong that person, no matter who he is. But at the same time, they were being prevailed over by Abdullah Kujabi, who was promising to reinstate them. So he could never get that done, because he was also finally removed from the NIA. He was transferred to Brikama as governor. Yes, but when I published that letter, and they were sacked, I remember lawyer Jobate, Baba Dinding, met along the corridors of the court in the High Court. He said, Borry? He said, I won my case without trial because of you. He said the NIA sees his clients' vehicles and other possessions, and he has made strenuous efforts to recover them without success. And he filed an action before the High Court. But the case was dragging. So when you publish that your dangerous letter, they called me and said, come and collect all your clients' properties. As a matter of fact, that time in question, NIA was full of equipments, movables, items they have lawfully seized from people. That day they discharged everything. Yes. All those items. Yes.
Who were the particular accused persons in that case, the NIA officials?
I can only remember the names of two of them now. Salimina Drame and Kajali Jawara. There was a boy so named Barrow.
Kambano dobeje akontomu baroldi.
I can't remember the rest of them, their names.
Do kotangol nying hakilo mawol tol muta.
And do you know if that particular case had any political influence whatsoever?
Okay, nying fo ila londo de yala no fo politico dunda ko nying kono nyasi yo do nyama ba.
Did those diamonds land in the hand of anybody in the higher echelons of the government?
Olulu wol nyi ila londo do fo yala no ko fo inara na futa modo bulo kono me alon ko abe santo le bang.
I did not know the person in the I did not know in whose possession they were. But as a matter of fact, when this issue arose, the officers who actually raided the Germans in their hotel room were also arrested. And I believe that time they must have recovered, the authorities, senior authorities must have recovered all these positions. But they quickly released them. And they wanted to cover up the story.
Is it possible that the diamonds are still in the hand of those NIA officers who had recovered them initially? Did they benefit from it?
I don't think that was possible. My strongest conviction is that they must have surrendered them to the authorities. When I published the letter, the then Director General Abdullahi Kujabi was very annoyed about it. He saw that as the strongest challenge to the authority of the NIA. The following day, no, the very day the letter was published, I had the matter I went for in Esau Magistrates Court. I was coming, I had one of these small boats. Then I received a call. A young lady in the office of the NIA called me. He said, "Are you Lawyer Touray?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm calling from the office of the President, NIA headquarters." He said, "The Director General has instructed me to inform you that you are needed at the NIA headquarters." I told her, "Tell your boss you have conveyed the message." Then I switched off my phone. I went home straight. It was much later that I was discussing with the then DPP Ajim. Then he told me this scenario, what happened between himself and Abdullahi Kujabi. How that happened was when these people were being prosecuted in Kanifing. On one occasion, he complained to me, the DPP complained to me. He said I was not following up on the matter. I said to him, but I came to court and I gave my testimony, and that's all I can do.
So you were a witness in this particular case?
Yes, I was a witness in the matter. Because the Germans could not come back. Because they were afraid of their own safety. So I had to go to court to give evidence. So that was the moment he told me. He said, you know, when you published that letter, Abdullahi came to my office. He was fuming with rage.
Sorry, can you repeat?
He was very angry. He said Abdullahi asked him, who is this lawyer? He said, he's a young man, he's around. He said, we must arrest him. He said, you want to arrest him? He said, yes. He said, in all my working relationship with you, I want to advise you today. And I want you to sit down. And you keep quiet. And I'll close my office. I'll lock it. And I want you to listen to me very carefully. He said, did you read this letter? He said, yes. He said, then he didn't understand it. He said, I understood the letter. He said, no. He said, Abdullah. He said, the gentleman who wrote this letter. Yes, if you want to arrest him, you will arrest him. But that will not scare him. I can assure you that. And if you release him, he's going to destroy your life. He said, there is another part of the story which he has not published. And that will be a direct attack on you in person. He said, when he told him that, then he realized he was feeling cold. He said, if you arrest him, you release him. But if you release him, he will destroy your life. And that was the absolute truth. Because briefly before that diamond incident, I had investigated the matter involving the Al-Rawi brothers. I had already investigated the matter involving the Al-Rawi brothers who were taken to Guantanamo Bay in Al-Rawi brothers. And all that evidence that I had was pointing at Abdullah in person. But that was it. He left the scene. He went to Brikama. That was the end of the story. Yes.
But the diamonds, they've disappeared forever.
They disappeared forever.
Plus over $200,000 US.
And let me also add, Dr. Alamin sold his house in Germany. Dr. Took that money, invested it in this diamond business. The profit that he was going to earn from that business, he wanted to build a children's home in the Gambia. That was going to be a charity.
I just wanted to make the link that Abdullah Kujabi was the head of the NIA then.
Yes, he was the head of the
NIA. And he reported directly to the president.
Yes.
And it is clear from evidence we've received in the commission that apart from that working relationship, there was also a personal relationship between them.
Well, we understand that he is an uncle to Jame. I don't know how true it is. And that was what forced me to give the letter a nationwide publicity. I didn't want the story to be covered. Much as I was interested in exposing it, I was equally interested in embarrassing the government.
Another cases you've been involved in were the cases of Ensa Baji, aka Jesus, who was a former IGP, as well as Usman Jame, former SG. Perhaps you could just treat the two together just to show what the issues were in those cases and how civil servants were prosecuted, arrested, prosecuted in the courts and dealt with by the regime.
Ensa Baji, former Inspector General of Police. His case was one of clear witch hunt. I'll tell you the genesis why I was charged.
Be kumo nying fole me dalilo me asabu yentumi.
He came here before the TRRC.
Another commission nyati lo jang.
Perhaps he did not disclose.
Asikeno ama wanya roke.
But actually led to his arrest.
Menna na sababu ala mutarola.
I'll tell you today.
Mbafole ne bi.
As I was charged because of the Ghanaian case.
Esa dalilo me asabu yetumiro de akangoda wala Ghanaian olo Africa tilijinda la banku dingo mola kuti.
And the drug that was uncovered in Bonto.
Aning osira ma fengo me alonko awanyar ta Bonto sade oto.
When this Ghanaian incident happened,
Biring Ghanaian banku dingo mola en keta.
Mr. Baji was not in the country, he was in Sudan.
Mr. Baji, memu esa Baji da manra banko kan jang abenu Sudan banko kan.
It was when he came
aketa la biring amurunta nang
that he was elevated, he finally became Inspector General of Police.
Inatana la makamu lafa ka ke police ol bela kundon ko memu Inspector General of Police.
The UN sent a team of investigators.
United Nations mwelem dunia bela o kafu banyi inatana kafo mo wulinde ja membu na ko nyin kiskisi la jang.
When they came, he was then the Inspector General of Police. There was a request that the police investigate the matter. Jesus refused. He said it was an NIA operation. The police had nothing to do with it. So let them ask the NIA to investigate the matter. They said no, they wanted a neutral body, and that's the police. To investigate the matter. He still refused. Then, as a way of meeting in the middle, he proposed that he could convey the NIA investigation report as IG to the UN. United Nations now. They all agreed over that. He wrote a letter and forwarded the report. Thereafter, he told me in person that the then Director General of NIA, Numo Kujabi, told him, did you realize that the information that you gave to UN was not correct? So he said he expressed anger over the matter. And he was not happy that he was misled in sending a wrong report. It was his belief, and I believe him, that it was Mr. Numo Kujabi who informed the government, the president at the time, that Jesus was going to leak the truth about the NIA, the Ghanaian incident. Because if you come to the substance of the charges against him, he was accused of being part of a ring of robbery incidents in the country. At the material time, those robberies were taking place. It was Jesus who arrested all the people involved. He arraigned them before the court. And they were convicted. They all escaped from custody, lawful custody, after their conviction and sentence. At that material time, he was, they escaped within the jurisdiction of the KMC. Jesus was then police commissioner in Brikama. It was the commissioner of operations who asked him to assist the police, the Gambia police force, in tracking the culprits back again. He arrested all of them along the Gambian border between the Gambia and Casamas. And they were brought back and prosecuted for escape from lawful custody. And they were sentenced again.
murundi na ye muta ye tumiro le kan wala nyindi ibe ko ibe Morocco na kanata luanta ya kan inata ne soron kotanke.
Would anybody imagine
that
the officer who has arrested you has taken you to court? You have been convicted and sentenced. And again you have escaped. He has arrested you again. He has taken you to court and you have been convicted. If it was true that Jesus was part of that ring of conspiracy of the robberies, what was most natural was for them to have accused him. They did not. So they brought him to court. And false witnesses to give false testimony against him. Some of them, they promised them that they were even going to release them if they would agree to give false testimony against him. And on the strength of that, he was convicted.
And that was information you received from your client at the time?
Yes, but quite apart from the information, his narration. I mean, you look at the setting, the possibilities. Is it reasonably possible that you can arrest me? We can be part of a conspiracy, and I'm getting the largest booty out of that. You arrest me now, take me before the court, get me convicted and sentenced. For some of them, they were serving a period of 10 years.
Ana mange ko nyi lana ko me ate mem fonye bari misal fe don kun hakilo fo hakilo si nyimuta no ite keta modi e ya momuta ya tumi ite ata yo momuta na ya nati ki asamba kitio nyati lon kitio ya kitindi kitio ya soron ay kana Morocco no mansala Morocco no ay kana ina nata yo mari mutana ya nati ko take ite hani kabi o mankanya ko sa ite ni o molle mo kilingol ite o me alon ko si nyafula ibita e be mutala e be nati la iko inarna tumiro ko ite ni o molle be fule kiling al kaku ke me alon ko luwanta yala memu boyinkande.
At no time, there was no allegation raised by any one of those accused persons that he was part of the ring of robbery which was ongoing in the country.
Who gave
the evidence that you are alleging was false in court?
There was this chap called Ramses.
Sorry?
There was this chap called Ramses. He came here and gave a testimony. And there was one gentleman, Abrahman, I think he's Abrahman Jallo. He was from Basse, but he's late now. Many of the witnesses even had to apologize to him in mile 2. So, but at the time, you go before the criminal court. Because of the proceedings, text message will enter a judge's number. And then you say court rise. Almost every sitting, the NIA would be there. Signals will be given to the judge. And he will rise and you go to chambers and they'll meet him there.
Who was the judge that handled that case?
Ikpala handled one of the matters and Justice Amadi handled the other.
And those events that you just mentioned happened in both of their cases, in their courts?
Not the issue of text messages coming through judge's phone in those two matters, but it happened in other sister cases. Not in Esau's case, but it happened in other sister cases.
So your conclusion is that it is your belief that those charges were bogus?
Of course, they were hoax charges.
But nonetheless, the court convicted them.
Yes, of course.
What about, are you finished?
Yes, I believe so far.
We are running out of time, actually.
Before you leave the answer by Jesus matter,
yes.
Is it your assertion, Mr. Touray, that he could not have been party to the massive cover-up that followed them the crime of killing the West African migrants?
Well, he was not in the country.
Right.
And from the story that I gathered from him, he never wanted the police to investigate the matter. All right, but I think what he did was to forward a copy of the NIA report to the UN.
But in the ko ay menke wala nyindi ko ka NIA la report on ka ka copy nyinta ka ki dunia bela banku ba e kay kafu banye.
At least that he told me.
Well, is that transmittal that perhaps would have linked him to the cover-up?
Sorry?
Say the cover-up could have been the transmittal of the report to the UN.
Yes.
But you are indicating that, or you are asserting that no, he could not have been part of that cover-up.
What I am, the version that I got from Jesus was this. That's as at the time when the report was being sent. He did not know how those people met their death. Okay. All right. It was after the events that Numo informed him that in fact he died out of wrongdoing. But the question of cover-up, I wouldn't be able to express any opinion on that.
Fine. Thank you. Council, continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just lastly, the issue of Usman Jame.
Okay. Usman was charged with the offense of economic crime.
Usman ya tumiro men denga kangoda wala mnyidigo fankotinya ayo barata wala.
And was arraigned before the magistrate in Banjul Magistrates Court.
Ya samba kiti mundandingo to memo Banjul Magistrates Court.
The court does not have jurisdiction to hear matters
pertaining
to economic crime. Nonetheless, he was convicted. Even when the court does not have jurisdiction.
And do you believe that both of these cases, the Ansar Baji case as well as the Usman Jame case, do you believe they were both politically motivated, and what is your reason?
For isa fono ko Ansar Baji la diamoning ani Usman Jama be mu fenet mi am political ba konole ando ite mon dalil sort of neatara yewole fo.
I've already told you the background to the Ansar Baji case. The case involving the former Secretary General Usman. The dimension that I have raised is the lack of jurisdiction in the court.
Even
if the charge against Usman was true, it should have been arranged before the High Court. But the only reason why they arranged him before the Magistrate Court was because the government was certainly confident that they were going to get a conviction against. Notwithstanding the court's lack of jurisdiction. And what was the government's interest in his case? Why was he charged and brought before the court? You know, I may not be able to go into the details of that, but there was a lot of infighting within the public service. Yes. What was his position? Sorry? He was Secretary General.
Secretary General.
The civil service.
And he was working directly on the Jame. So definitely something like that would not have happened if Jame did not actually consent to it. Of course, I mean, you cannot get the Secretary General dismissed, arrested and charged and convicted without President giving directives.
Secretary General, it also no la ka umuta ka sinidula ga tumiro denga ga ngoda hanika bi amanda o ka samba kidi dularo ya for president de mamfen kala muraje tumala mera be do ko la president wala ko
as well as the previous IGP as well. That would be the same case.
Ani fana police la kunton ko nunto ufana la ko keta no wala nyam.
What happened later was that these directives were in writing. The Office of the President will write directly to the IGP arrest this man, investigate and prosecute.
President officer ka safaro ke police la kunton ko la officer ka foko ani mo kare alamuta aliya kitindi oranda le tumiro de kan o sifa la ka kitama.
Because I remember in the case involving Dr. Njoguba,
hakilo ba kan case me alon ko Dr. Njoguba ba ko
Lamin AMS Jobate,
in Lamin AMS Jobate,
and no, I believe in the case of a copy of that directive came to the court. It was the case involving Jobate,
Pahari. And you were privy to that?
Yes.
But in the cases of your own clients, that did not happen?
No, they did not produce any executive directive, if they existed at all.
But you believe that this happened, it was orally done, because it could not have, these prosecutions could not have happened without the knowledge and the consent of the head of state.
You cannot arrest an Inspector General of Police, remand him mile 2 without the President giving orders to it.
Police la kunton ko eto woto murano la katumiro de kan oda ya samba ka sebungo do waya tara banko la nyaton ko même President
appointing authority.
President wala nyaton ko de men ka tambondroke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Touray. We have come to the end of your testimony. And I will now hand you over to Mr. Chairman and the Commissioners.
Very detailed and informative testimony. Thank you so much, Mr. Touray. We've taken a full day of your time, but to come and assist us in our fulfillment of our mandate. But thank you very much indeed for a very good testimony.
Abaraka bake kanjul abaraka bake sedo being tatilo be mume nata si jampruke la sediandro di sediandro mi alon ka kita kumati mi alon ka kumata bakanda asa hayata fana.
Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Imam C, you have the floor, please.
Imam C, la left again ninka.
Mr. Touray, jërëjëf.
Mr. Touray, thank you. Your testimony, for your testimony here, it is very clear.
Wow, ñu lay gërëm ci li nga wax ni wax bi nga xamantene wax nga ko boole ko ak sa dëgër fit.
We are thanking you, the testimonies that you have gathered here, and you have stated your testimonies with confidence.
Wow, liggéey bi nga liggéey depuis bi nga nekké depuis buñ duggé TRRC ñu ngi dégg sa tour.
Since we ever started this TRRC, we have been hearing your name.
Ben niñ la gisé tay.
Until up to today when we see you.
Waaye dëgg sa liggéey bi rafet na trop.
But truly, you have did a very good job.
Jaar nga fu xat waaye terewul ni nga buggé sa réew.
You have encountered difficulties, but still that does not prevent you to show how much love you have for your country. You didn't run away because you love your country. Because you were having the opportunity to travel to anywhere you wanted to live. You will have secured a job there. Because of the love you have for your country. That's the reason why you didn't go away. The only question I have for you is whether there was a particular day that day you were very scared and threatened.
Okay, thank you so much, Imam C.
Imam C.
I don't know how to how to answer this question. Quite frankly, there were people who came to my father on a number of occasions to warn him that I should be careful. To the extent that he wouldn't allow me to be outside by Maghrib time. 7, I must be inside the compound.
Fo nyin temben fudla dingira ravang abuka som puru fitiro nyi yendara banta ni fitiro sira na kamem fo wala puru ngatara suwakon.
I was also privy to some confidential information.
Dung harje har nyin kan fana nyin ketanya harje de puru ngakibaro do sormialon ko kullo kibaro la.
That my name was listed down.
To keta tolti me alon ko asafetale.
But I was not traumatized by that. I knew one thing, Jammeh was going to leave this country. And I have faith in the Almighty. I know no matter how difficult the challenges were, Jammeh was going to leave me here. Yes. If I was threatened, I would have left the Gambia.
Thank God then.
God.
Thank you very much. Deputy Chair, you have the floor, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sagar. Thank you, Borry. Let me add my voice to that of Imam by congratulating you and also to thank you for your courageous stance and against tyranny. Now, having said this, I have got 2 brief questions. I don't know whether the answer will be brief. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the first one is, how did the overt disregard of judicial values and processes by the judiciary
sila akeno ranyare judiciary memu kiti bundal nyinti ila bunya hormoni bunya aning alonko tamani mafa jiko men sorka be kang
impact on the public trust and confidence in the legal system of the country.
Narna kolea dal sabu jamae jiko ni mafa men soro ye
and on strengthening impunity.
Aning kanana moe kuge me ya lonko ay luatinya ay marietu nyama kumala bo kang ka ko nyulo saba.
Okay, thank you so much. I must say you have summarized it all.
Baraka bake mbafula ko yekumoni yafole yasutiandile yafo.
If you work in the judiciary at that time,
there
was a time when, in fact, when people have problems, they don't want to engage Gambian lawyers. There were few who would want to engage Nigerian lawyers. Because the belief is that if you engage a Nigerian lawyer, he'll be able to talk to his brother Nigerian judge. That even if you have to be convicted, there can be some sympathy for you. The Jammeh completely overrun the system. Judiciary was firmly in his grip. But there were a few exceptions. It was all not bad. I remember one young man, Lamin Bai. He was a magistrate in Banjul Magistrate Court. You are assured that if you are arraigned before him, he will grant you bail. And there were sister Gambian judges also. They would come between the state and the citizens. But the system was that bad. It reached a point when, in fact, the accused persons were detained along with witnesses. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Witness will be arrested and detained and will not be released until when he gives his testimony. So that was how bad the system was. And he not only asserted pressure on the judiciary, but in the criminal division also. He had a fund that was being disbursed by the Ministry of Justice. This issue was raised before this very commission, but it was not properly investigated. There was not full and complete disclosure, because every payment that was made was documented. And I will tell you, in the handing over notes of one Attorney General after the order, most of these payments were highlighted. So that was how bad it was. And most of our colleagues, the lawyers, were fatigued. They were exhausted. Some wanted to pack up and wanted to leave the jurisdiction if Jammeh was to win in 2016. It was God's time that we had a change. Yes.
The second question is in relation to how the military
turned
courthouses into military zones to instill fear into the judges so that they could influence their judgments.
Isaje o kidi telal nying ila kidi telo nying nyanna kaka nyame isaje sis maslangota ya dundul sondomol kono nyanna kuntula nyame ata kuntula o nyama.
You had the personal experience.
Ita fam kunnon keta molde me ya lonko ya lon ya ko nyin takile.
But not everyone is Borry Touray.
Bare mobe manke Borry Touray tide.
And not everyone is Justice Monaghan.
Bare mobe fana manke Justice Monaghan.
So how did this really affect the judges in giving out their judgment?
Sila nying akakikeno nyare le nara nying kuolbe lare inteng kiti tela nying niara kuolbe lare inteng ikang ila kiti kundunya nying akela kiti kundunya nying akabatandi no nyadi le.
Okay, thank you. I think
Baraka.
In the recent past, they resorted to bringing the paramilitary to escort accused persons to court. I think the idea of soldiers escorting suspects in court wasn't a very common phenomenon. It's only when soldiers are involved in treason that sometimes you see soldiers. But there was an incident in 2006 when Justice Yeboah was handling the treason trial. One of the soldiers misfired his gun. And as at the time when it happened, the judge was very close by. He had to run into our chambers. So many things happened. But the picture was all not bad too. There was interference, but yes, there were people who actually balanced the show. Yes, among the judges and the magistrates. And I must also say that most of this trouble actually would happen in the criminal division. The High Court is divided into various divisions. So if you are not in the criminal division, you have a peace of mind. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Council. Thank you. Imam C, don't shower Mr. Touray with lots of praises about bravery.
Imam C,
No, I said he shouldn't shower
Mr.
Touray with lots of praises, because that bravery doesn't originate from him. The Tourays have their syringe, there's the Sesame and the Morris. They are the ones who make them brave. So don't give him any praises about being brave. Commissioner Carr, you have the floor, please.
Commissioner Carr, wala lafta sedo nyinin kala kotange.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Inimbarabake Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Touray, for your wonderful work.
Mr. Touray, memusedo ila doku kendoka.
Defending the human rights of your fellow citizens. It's indeed commendable. I want to ask you two questions. The first is in relation to the reasons that you have given before this commission. For why you believed Mr. Esa Baji was witch-hunted. You've told us that it was in relation to two issues, that is the issue of the Ghanaians and the issue of the drugs. And you've told us why he was persecuted in relation to the Ghanaians. I didn't hear you narrate the other issue, which is the issue of the drugs. Can you help us with that?
Thank you. It was an oversight, and it was a very interesting observation. You know, it was the international intelligence institutions that alerted the Gambia government. That a large quantity of drugs was stored in Bonto, and it was being peddled. The perception of the president was that it was Jesus who leaked that intelligence to those institutions. And that was the very reason why they turned the story around to implicate him, the very person, in that allegation. Because this was an isolated spot. And if you know Jesus, I will tell you a remark made by Sidney Riley, of blessed memory. He was former Inspector General of Police. I remember one day he picked me in his car. We were both going to Kanifi Magistrates Court. My vehicle had a breakdown. That was when Jesus' case was ongoing. He told me, he said, I wish you well in this matter. He said, your client was a very effective field officer. Even as a junior officer from the training school.
He
said, you give him any file, no matter how complicated, he will bring you results within 24 hours. But Jammeh himself said it. He said, it's now that I have got the best Inspector General of Police. Referring to Jesus. So he thought there couldn't have been any other person who could have leaked that vital intelligence information without Mr. Baji.
So your belief is that Jammeh knew about the drugs? He didn't want anybody to disclose it or to leak it.
Well, see, I did not participate in that trial. But my brother was one of the lawyers in the case. And that is LS Camara. We cannot disclose it all as lawyers. Client's confidence. But if you would go through the cross-examination records, when I was cross-examining Silaba Samate, the issue about the origin of those drugs and who was behind it was clearly captured. He denied, but I put it to him. Yes. Let me tell you this. Is it reasonably possible that such an operation can take place in a country without any solid arrangement with the government of the day? All of the people involved are foreigners. Not one Gambian among them. You ship 2 tons of cocaine inside the country. And then you get on and about trading it. We are all not sleeping in this country. There must have been some high degree of complicity. And you would be surprised that notwithstanding amendments to the law on drugs, imposing, in fact, death penalty, the Venezuelans were subsequently pardoned and they were all released from prison. They only served a very short period. At least if the state was completely innocent about it, they shouldn't have given them this thing. They shouldn't have given them pardon for the largest shipment of drugs in the nation. In our entire history. And not only drugs. They also had AK-47 machine guns with them. And that was the latest version of the AK-47. At least, if you say this, I wouldn't mind much about drugs, but at least the gun peddling aspect of it, in my opinion, should have been such a weightier consideration on the part of the government not to have granted them any form of pardon.
So
my conclusion is that those who came here on an arranged platform that they will enjoy impunity and trade what they traded, and nothing was going to come out. But for the international alert, they would not have been arrested.
Thank you. My final question. We've all commended you for your excellent work. And I know Imam has asked you a very funny question. But you've worked in an environment which was very difficult, as your colleagues did. So my question is, what kept you going, and what was your most inspirational moment in your career at that time?
Well, it was only God. Yes, and I must say I was given to a lot of prayer also. Yes. On my own accord, sometimes it even affects my work, my coursework. Yes, when I close from office, I have no business with my books. So that's the other part of my life.
Thank you once again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Touray, if you have any concluding remarks to make, you may please proceed to do so now.
Mr. Touray, silang commissioner moment soro membe lafte ke nyininka silang kiamane dunyo silo dila ninga dre kuma soro be lafle ke la kuma da soro men isitenteng.
I thank God that I have sailed through this. And let me emphasize that I owe my very life to the Almighty. He was the creator who protected me and guided me throughout. What we have gone through as a nation was highly traumatizing. Most of what comes to us as lawyers is what is visible. The physical abuse on our clients, the infraction of their rights, and so on. But I remember I was talking to Dr. Sise of Kololi Clinic. I referred a client to him who was a subject of abuse. For him to examine his body and do a medical report. He told me, I have seen the gentleman he referred to me. He said, but the two sister professions, law and medicine, he said, I think we know more than the lawyers in terms of the trauma which is meted out on victims. He said there are certain aspects of their experience that they would not disclose to their lawyers. He said, I give you a case in point. He said, an elderly gentleman from within the community of Brikama, highly responsible person, who has a very large family. He has got children and grandchildren. He said he was brutalized by the junta. all over his body.
Ya balo be dina.
But that was one small part of it.
But wo mo kundina de kuol kono.
He said the detailed part of the agony was that he was castrated.
Ko ko nyum fongo mi bije komi ya kasele. Ya senele.
He said when the man told him this, he then asked him, why don't you go to the press and publicize this? He said the man turned around and told him, he said, I don't want to embarrass my family. My wives, my children and grandchildren. So he said, I must keep quiet over this till my grave. For me, it's, and I believe for all of us, it's a learning experience. I used to have a great deal of confidence in the average Gambian. I thought everybody was a dependable character. I remember when I was a student in Furabe, then the NPC government, the APC government had failed completely the nation. APC imang taranyake mialango mol banko dingol fonga jikitan wal. On a daily occurrence, things would happen to the disappointment of the average citizen. And I used to stand in the midst of my Sierra Leonean colleagues and I would tell them, this is not possible in the Gambia. I used to swear on the Quran that this cannot happen in the Gambia. Because I had faith in the country. But I was mistaken. What Jammeh did, he did it in conspiracy with Gambians. And like Vatikiotis said, he's a historian who wrote the history of Egypt in a book entitled Modern Egypt. He said no society is written on a tabula rasa. No society is written on a clean slate. I thank God for one development in the sub-region. I believe in smaller nations like the Gambia, we may not go through the experience of coups anymore. Because if it happens, the bigger nations will not, in West Africa, will not allow it. But for that, what I have seen Gambians tolerate, anytime there is a coup in this country, we can be enslaved in our own country. As far as the army is concerned, I was very hopeful that there was going to be security sector reforms. But I'm disappointed. I was hopeful that the commissions of inquiries that actually were established I was hopeful that the government was going to implement the recommendations of those commissions of inquiry. But I'm equally disappointed. And I'm afraid that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report may be faced with the same degree of lethargy that at the end of the day it will only become stories in our bantabas. I think we are faced with the problem of leadership. I'm not doing politics, but this is our country. I'm calling on the government without any partisan feeling. People who took liberty, who took liberty into their hands and brutalized innocent Gambians. I'm appealing to the government that they must not allow an air of impunity over that. Because I believe every Gambian has the urge to revenge. But the only reason why people are not doing so is because they have faith that the government will enforce the law. So I'm calling on all Gambians. I'm calling on the government that at least if all other commission reports are going to be ignored, the report of the TRRC should be looked into. I had the unfortunate experience of listening to a lady when I was a magistrate in Farafenye. She was a relative of Sadauda. Only because of that, she was arrested. Brought to mile 2. Was tortured naked. Electrocuted in her private part. Cold water poured over her. Anytime she sits to reflect over it, she will cry. And she was in, she had age on her side. Are we going to allow all these people to go to their graves without any form of justice taking place? As a government and a people, I hope, and this is my very big hope, that the government will give due attention to the report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Because without it, how are we going to guarantee justice to people who have been traumatized? Some people are not even enjoying the common feeling that they are Gambians. Because they feel that they have been betrayed and disappointed by their own government. I'm referring to the APRC government. The people you are expected to protect, if they are the ones who have now become your victims, are we going to allow that climate of impunity to prevail? I hope we will all, as Gambians, take the position that that is not going to prevail in this country. Really. People have seen their parents abused in all forms. And the only reason why they have not taken to the path of revenge.
It's
because there is a hope that a day of reckoning will come. And people will be called to account. In my personal opinion, even when those who have been brutalized have forgiven, I don't think there should be blanket impunity. And I believe that's all I have to say. There have been many Gambians like myself who stood their grounds who are not alive here today. So for me, it's not on account of my own strength. It's only by the will and the power of the Almighty. I thank my parents, and then I thank TRRC. I was unable to come here much earlier, mainly because of my schedule in the courts. But may I take this opportunity to thank the entire staff of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's a service which the nation appreciates very much. Because for us lawyers, we've been privy to most of this information. But if you tell a lot of people in the streets, they can't believe it. So, but the perpetrators themselves, some of them have now opened up. And they have explained what they did. Although many also came here and they lied. And the nation is aware that they have lied. So, Honorable Chairman, I can only commend you and members of your commission and the entire staff here. We are praying and hoping that the Almighty will continue to guide you for you to be able to successfully accomplish this task. I thank you all. And God bless you all.
Thank you. Lots of wisdom in those concluding remarks, Mr. Touray. Thank you very much indeed. All your efforts in coming to testify. Yes, the objectives of the commission as defined in the Constituent Act does mention healing and reconciliation. But it also has as a principal objective addressing impunity. We as a commission will do our best to make recommendations that would help bring about reconciliation and reconciliation, healing, but very importantly, to address impunity. And make recommendations for meaningful reforms. We do hope that the country as a whole would fight and struggle to implement those recommendations.
Kato be kala ka je kon tolewo sutundirol min fintina kibarol e ba jela ko wolbe tamata la ko nyanta tamala en kon tole afo nyami.
Again, we thank you enormously for your efforts.
Ko tenke mba fule ya baraka yekata ko minke kana jang.
And this would bring us to the end of our proceedings for today. And it is the end of the 22nd session of the Commission. We won't have any public hearings next week. We'll work in the committees. The work of the Commission would continue in the committees. And we will resume our public hearings on Monday, the 19th of April. We thank you very much, for your attention. And, we will call it a day and a week for the public hearings. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.